good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
Sheriff, you're not cheating on your wife if you eat my lemon square.
Your lemon squares taste like ass.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. I'm ready for the shriekquel, and I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and I am ready for that screamake, y'all. This is our really wobbly introduction to part 2 of our coverage of Scream 4, which, if you are a regular listener of the show, you know that we will be going through the plot of the film. And boy, oh boy, there's a lot of plot to talk about.
There's a lot of plot. We haven't really scaled it back in the way that we normally do, if only because this is a big deal for us. So yeah, first time we've ever split an episode in 2, and I'm kind of excited.
I am too. And no, it's funny because I was editing part 1 this today, and I was like, oh, we start saying like, oh, like you can see on your phone like how long the episode is, so like, it's probably going to be long. And then we decided at the end, let's just split it in 2.
Yeah. Oh shit, we're past the hour mark. Okay, time to cut this in half.
But it's okay, because so everyone, of course, if you are listening to this and you haven't listened to part 1, we would implore you to go listen to it, because we have a lot of fun, juicy details about the production, the post-production, the reception, and alternate versions of Scream 4. And what part 2 is going to be is we are just going to be talking about the movie we have in front of our eyes.
Yes, with the occasional sidebar to talk about some of the very deep bench collection of deleted scenes.
There are 21 deleted / extended / alternate scenes, and we won't go over the alternate stuff because we did cover that in part 1. But yeah, some of the stuff that they cut out, I'm like,
yeah,
I would have left this in.
Yep. Oh, I'm basically saying if you want to do a drinking game for this episode, it's going to be me saying I wanted more, I wanted more. I just want more of this movie, and those deleted scenes are giving me little tasters.
But it's a good more where it's like, I want more because this isn't working for me. It's I want more because I love what I'm seeing so much.
Very much the latter, but also, like, I'm frustrated with the economy of the final film because I feel like we're not getting enough of these characters, and I'm seeing what could have been in these deleted scenes, and I'm saying, no, but give us more. These characters are good. We just need more time with them.
I do wonder, because there are so many, because we talked about this a little bit in the reception yesterday, but one of the other complaints was, the trio, they're off screen for so much of the time, and watching it again today, I was like, I don't feel
that, no.
Only with Gail, because she is attacked in that barn at the hour mark, and then she is out until the very end of the movie. So
yeah,
that I get, but like all these people are like, oh, Sydney's barely in it. I'm like, I feel like she's in it more than she was in Scream 3.
Oh my god, yeah. Anytime people say like, oh, it's just not that much Sydney, I'm thinking, are you watching Scream 3 right now?
But okay, so let's just jump right into this. Sorry, this is so weird. We've never just started an episode going into the plot, so let's go.
Okay, here we go. So we open with the first of 2 fake-out sequences. So the first one is revealed to eventually be Stab 6, and in this sequence we get Dimwit Trudy, who is played by Shanae Grimes, Canadian. We also have her sidekick, and I'm not talking about Sherry, who is played by Lucy Hale. I'm literally talking about the electronic device that she is holding.
What I love about this, and these are the little details, right? Because it's a sidekick, and people were starting this movie and they were like, it's 2011, and they're like, a sidekick? What the fuck?
The fuck?
So out of date.
Yeah.
Well, and they're talking about Saw 4 when Saw, the final quote-unquote final chapter, came out the year before this came out. But it's because this is Stab 6, so this would have come out in the mid-2000s during the torture porn craze, during the remake boom, and The Sidekick, which came out in 2002. So honestly, like, it's so clever. I don't know why Shanae Grimes is named Trudy, because that is horrible, but...
That is an old lady name, but so is Sherry.
But yeah, I actually do really like this, because, there's a whole thing, like, with the first stab. In Scream 2, where it's like, it's really badly written.
Yes. which I love. I fucking love it. I love how the Stab movies are just pale imitations of the Scream films. Not like, oh, they're badly done. It's just, as Ari said yesterday, they're equivalent to the kind of cheapo, generic studio films that we had come to expect.
Yes, but I don't fully get that from this. I mean, we have the stupid decision, which is like, don't open the door. She's going to open the door. But there's nothing here on par with like, I don't even know you, and I dislike you already,
Oh my God, how dare you speak that way about Heather Graham in Stab 1. But that line is iconic, sir.
No, it's so good because it's so intentionally bad.
So bad, yeah.
But yeah, so then we get Ghostface calling them. He is immediate. I'm sorry, he, she, they, whatever the Stab 6 killer is.
We don't have a pronoun for Stab 6 killer, no.
We don't have a pronoun, but immediately very violent right off the gate. And I do think that's tying into the torture porn stuff.
Oh, interesting. I thought that this was actually just setting the tone for Scream 4 because this movie is a hell of a lot meaner than the first 3 films in the franchise.
It is, and you are correct. And granted, I mean, when we get to one of my favorite lines later about someone's eyelids, yeah, it's so good. But I think specifically with Stab 6, which again, at the time, we don't know that's what this is. We think this is the movie we are watching.
Sure.
It's just so clever. It is so clever. And I mean, yeah, anything else to say about this first part? Because I know I've been going off.
I mean, one of the big things when Scream 4 went into production is they just started announcing this massive cast.
Yeah.
And just like Scream 2, to me, that's the kind of closest comparison is when Scream 2 was being announced and it was like Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jerry O'Connell, Portia de Rossi, and like all of these people were like, they're all in this movie? Okay. And I remember when Scream 4 goes into production, it was very much like Shanae Grimes, Lucy Hale, Anna Paquin, Kirsten Bell, and we had no context for how little or a lot they would be in the final film. So when we see the opening, we're like, oh, okay, I'm excited to know who they're going to kill off in the opening because, of course, the opening's always such a big fucking deal. So I remember in the theater being a little disappointed because I thought, oh, okay. I mean, sure, I know these actresses, but they're not big actresses.
Well, okay. I'm really glad you said that because I was like, because I remember that was something people complained about. And when I say people, I mean people our age and older. And I'm
sure.
Oh yeah, they're not even really famous, which I get they're not Drew Barrymore famous, but
they were famous in their own right.
Well, I was like, y'all, your age is showing because it's Lucy Hale from Pretty Little Liars.
Yeah, and Shanae Grimes from 90210.
Exactly. And so unfortunately, you are not in the target demographic for what these people are famous for, and sorry about it.
Look, I'm just making the Jamie Lee Curtis and Freaky Friday I'm old gif right now.
Yeah. It always bugs me when I see people like, they don't really fit the mold for what a Scream opening should be. And I was like, because you're not watching youth TV, which again, like so much of the stuff in the original trilogy, it's a lot of WB actors. I mean, that's the whole thing that set off the craze with that type of cast for a slasher movie that people seem to hate so much. But yet we get it in 2011, which is doing the 2011 version of that. And people are like, but they're not famous enough.
Oh, 100%. Which is funny, right? Because then we move into the second, which is Anna Paquin and Kirsten Bell, which for me was 100% like, there we go. They're my A-list actresses. I got my True Blood Anna Paquin, also a bisexual icon representation. Yes. And then, of course, Kirsten Bell, who I'm like worshiping, fanboying over because of Veronica Mars.
Veronica Mars is the big one, but she didn't really become a household name until Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which admittedly was 3 years before this. But yes, like these are people know them. And okay, so I also love this because this is basically like Anna Paquin is the critic, right? Like she is
100%. She's the armchair critic.
Oh, and it's so
the
good.
State of horror right now, and you're just like, oh, bitch, okay.
Which a lot of even the negative reviews did say that this was the best part of the film. I don't think it's the best part. I think it's a really, really good part.
I like it a lot. It's just very brief to me. Like, I love both of these actresses, and we barely get to spend time with them. But I think that's very much by design because it keeps the flow clicking until we get into the actual opening.
It's also a PSA for not talking in a movie theater.
Shut the fuck up.
I'm legitimately, I'm sure it's a rights issue, but I'm legitimately surprised the Alamo Drafthouse hasn't like co-opted this for their don't talk in text in the movie thing.
Love it. You know what? There's still time for Scream.
Oh my god, if only. We'll let you know. So, okay, anything else about this before we move into what the actual film is?
I guess just to quickly circle back to our discussion about Sinead Grimes and Lucy Hale and how I didn't think they were big enough stars. I fully anticipate saying that once again when I see half the cast of the new Scream film, because as soon as that cast got announced and it was like this big rolling list, I was like, oh,
who?
I don't recognize a bunch of these people. And then I was like, yeah, okay. Good job, Grandpa.
But what's pretty good is, and we'll talk about this more in our Scream 2022 episode on Patreon, a lot of them have actually become more known in the past year.
Yeah.
So, okay, moving into the real film.
Actual opening with
Jenny
Scream 4. And Marnie.
Okay, so and I need an answer. I'm not trying to be snarky. So, this reveal is great. I remember seeing this in theaters, and every time I show it to someone, it's like, what? Like, stab 7?
It got to the point where I was like, how many more times are we going to do this? Are they going to go to 10? Like, stab 10?
Oh, it's so
funny.
Good, but I'm kind of on Marnie's side here, where she's like, wait, if the opening of Stab 6 is Stab 7, so it works for us, right? Because we have not seen Stab 6. But my issue is this. If you are in this universe and you are going to see Stab 7 in the movie theater, and the beginning of the movie is Stab 6...
What is the rest of the movie?
But you know that, so it's like, it's not subversive for the people in the world of the film, right? Like, it's like, oh, like, why am I watching the opening of Stab 6? I guess maybe it's like, the people in Stab 7 are watching Stab 6, so Stab 7 takes place in a different universe than Stab 6.
Yeah, I feel like we're meant to assume that there isn't a huge amount of continuity, which is kind of one of the jokes that Jenny makes, right? You know, oh, they kind of go to shit after 4.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I was just always like, well, okay, but like if I'm Marnie watching this movie, it really doesn't make sense if you've seen 6. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that's just a testament to how not good the Stab movies are supposed to be, that they would try to do something like this, and it's just like, what?
I mean, and again, this is also really fun at poking at, I mean, not just the Saw franchise, this is really any horror franchise in general, because the second we get that time travel gag.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Okay, so I'm curious, who do you think they're calling out the most with the time travel gag?
I don't know. I mean, again, what would have been popular around this time is Saw and Paranormal Activity. I mean, they're not calling out anything directly, but I would feel like it's probably Saw, if only because Saw 5 was the first one to get, like, panned by fans and critics alike. Maybe?
Okay, but there's no time travel in that.
Give me a franchise with time travel.
I guess I was thinking mostly about the kind of retconning that happens in a lot of the Friday the 13th.
Or Halloween.
Although now that we're talking about it aloud, I'm realizing actually with Saw, there isn't time travel, but the way that it's fucking around with time, like, oh, 3 and 4 are happening at the same time and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. I could actually see that being the criticism.
Yeah, and I was Paranormal Activity 6 like uses some weird, but that wasn't out by this point, so it doesn't matter.
Right. Okay. You know what? We're spinning our wheels. We'll move on.
It's fine. We'll move on. By the way, though, so I know Britt Robertson is your favorite actress.
Ugh.
How does she do for you in this sequence?
You know what? She's fine in this, mostly because she doesn't actually have to do that much. Like, if there is a benefit to having actresses cast in these cold opens, it's that they get to come in, they burn bright, and then they get extinguished. So Britt Robertson can't do too much damage here. No, she's fine, honestly. My biggest issue is just, like, I love how all the actresses kind of look like their pair.
Yeah.
Scream loves to model, like, let's give all the women chunky streaks. Let's give them all the same haircut. And Marnie and Jenny, it looks like they could have stepped off the set of either Sorority Row or Black Xmas.
Well, yes, actually, that is a very, very apt description. But also because I was like, what were they famous for? I guess Amy T. Gordon was Friday Night Lights, and Britt Robertson was on...
Question mark, yeah.
No. So, when this came out, she would have been on The Secret Circle, that one season wonder.
Right.
But before that started, she was on another, maybe a 2-season wonder, called Life Unexpected, with Sherry Appleby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, again, they were CW babies. I'm sorry, she was a CW baby. Amy T. Gordon was ABC?
NBC?
Sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
Friday Night Lights, whatever it was.
Trace is like, I don't watch football.
My mom did, so I never heard the end of that show. I've never seen a single episode.
Okay, I'm going to stop everybody from hitting the send on the tweet. That show is legitimately great. No, it's not about football. Let's move on.
No, I have heard that many times.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe it. I just don't want to watch it.
Okay, that is fair. You're missing out. It's a great show. Anything to say about Roger Jackson's Ghostface in any of these scenes?
Well, I like it. And of course, we talked about this yesterday, but this is the Craven writing that we get with more of his dialogue, because there wasn't a phone call in that original opening.
Mm-hmm.
I do love you're the dumb blonde with the big tits. We'll have some fun with you before you die.
Yes.
There's something... It feels taboo for Ghostface to be saying tits.
Yeah, don't be saying tits, Ghostface.
It's weird.
Well, it very much feels like, oh, Ghostface has upped his misogyny in 2011. Like, he's not content to just make idle threat. Well, I guess they're not idle. He's not content to just make threats. He now also is like, you're a bitch, and I'm gonna Freddy Kruegerize you before I kill you.
One thing that this does introduce, though, is the app for the Ghostface voice.
Yes, I'm glad you commented on that. It feels like a direct commentary on Scream 3.
It really does, but it also works. I mean, we know this. Like, whenever you introduce technology in a film,
danger.
Yeah, it immediately dates it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like for the most part, I mean, like, we get that commentary on with Kristen Bell, which is like, well, I guess now it will be Twitter.
I love it. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And I don't think anything in this movie, and especially this opening scene, has really dated
It hasn't
itself.
aged badly. No.
Because, I mean, granted, maybe in 30 years there won't be a Facebook, but I mean, whatever.
Let's hope so.
If anything, it's Stab 6 and 7 that are doing the dating, not Scream 4 itself.
Yes, and that's such a clever way to put that off to the side, right? Like, we're going to introduce this. You can say, oh, what's with the antiquated technology? And then we're into the film proper, and we're getting sucked into the world. So we're not thinking about it anymore.
Yeah. And again, an app. You're not saying, it's not referencing like any particular thing. It's just an app. And I really want that app to be a thing.
Oh my God. Hello, you could be making so much money, but also we would all be in so much danger.
Oh, yeah. Like, a Scream would actually happen in real life.
100%, yeah. One of the things that I like about this opening is that we're already getting a lot of references back to the original Scream. So I feel like we spent a bunch of time when we covered Scream 3 last year talking about how it feels like it's closing the loop by revisiting a lot of things with Maureen and bringing the story back to its origins.
Right.
But I feel like Scream 4 is actually doing a really great job of paying homage to kind of classic references in a way that Scream 3 couldn't always deliver. So I'm thinking specifically about how Marnie gets thrown through the back door, and it's like the chair coming through Drew Barrymore's window. We've got Jenny being stabbed in the back, which happens fairly regularly in the series, but it always reminds me of Dewey stumbling out of the party.
Oh, see, it always reminds me of Jenny McCarthy.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
And then the garage.
Yeah, and then the garage is the very obvious one.
Well, and I will... you know what? I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait till we get to some of these deleted scenes.
Oh, okay.
Well, because there is there's a lot of commentary on, like, especially with the M, where it's like, oh, you forgot the one rule about remakes, blah, blah, blah. I don't get that as much in this movie as I think the movie thinks it's trying to push. Like, oh, we're remaking Woodsboro. And when we get to some of these deleted scenes, I do think there's stuff in the deleted scenes that make that more apparent and easier to buy.
Okay. I'm interested to hear it as it comes up then.
Okay.
So we get our title card, and then we open on Woodsboro proper. So we didn't really know exactly where we were. There's a mention by Jenny and Marnie that they live in Woodsboro.
Don't they mention Trevor at some point, too?
Yes, they do.
You don't catch that on the first time viewing, because you're like, who the fuck is Trevor?
Who the fuck is Trevor?
I will say, and this is, again, a score thing, but when we get to the title card and it is going to the sounds' Something Is Worth to Die For, I actively disliked that on a first-time viewing. Like, it just didn't fit the movie for me, and for some reason now I really like it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I always kind of forget that the Scream 4 appears over the mask. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. We're like really bringing Ghostface into the center of this story.
No, it's because we have the formatted title with Scream 4. Although I do think, because again, another big complaint with this movie is that it is the one film in the franchise so far that doesn't include Red Right Hand. And I do think that this probably would have been the best place to use that.
Agreed. Yeah. It's tricky. I don't know why they opted not to use it, if they just felt like it was too obvious a homage, or maybe it'd been overdone. But it's funny, these little things that we latch onto as fans, where we say, okay, well, I'm so excited to see where they're going to incorporate. What do you mean it's not in here?
That was really good.
Honestly, like, there are certain things that you need to include in a Scream film if you want to survive your audience expectations.
It bothers me less and less with each subsequent viewing, if only because, like, again, that tagline, new decade, new rules, I'm like, you know what, it's fine. We're going new because, again, we have a new look, we have a new soundtrack. It's still Marco Beltrami, but, like, it does feel noticeably different than those first three films, while also feeling remarkably similar.
Yeah, I really like the way that Ari put it in part 1, where he said it feels like the trilogy is its own thing, and then this is like an extra bonus chapter where we get to wrap some things up.
Yeah.
And that's how I've begun to consider Scream 4, is that it feels like a gift. Like the movie that I didn't think we were ever going to get, where everything about this is just a joy because I didn't ever anticipate being able to come back to this world.
And maybe that's why I'm so forgiving with its flaws, which, I mean, again, we've already pointed out some and we will continue to point out the flaws, but man, this is the antithesis of it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Scream just gets a free pass. Sorry, motherfuckers. Okay, so let's dig in then. So really what we begin with is a series of vignettes where we're just kind of quickly introducing a bunch of the key players. Some of them are new, some of them are old. So we begin with publicist Rebecca, who is played by Alison Brie, as she is driving Sydney Prescott, Neve Campbell, to the bookstore, and she is in Woodsboro to promote her book, Out of Darkness.
And she has not aged a single day since Scream 3.
Right, she looks fan-fucking-tastic. And her and Gail's outfits in this movie...
Oh, the purple suit for Gail is...
The purple suit, and then Sydney's got this pink one that she's wearing to the book reading, which I think Neve Campbell just looks stunning in.
Yes. And, you know, we talked about how critics were, you know, rude about the look of Hayden Panettiere in this film. I didn't see this really so much from critics, but I did see it a lot in fans, because you know that fans love to come after Courteney Cox and her fillers. And this is during season 3, I think, of Cougar Town. And I will tell you right now, A, it doesn't fucking matter what she's done to her face. B, she's actually, you can Google it, like, she's done interviews where she talks about how she had her fillers dissolved, she had them taken out or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
But she also talks about how she regrets it and like what got her to that point. Like, go Google it. If anyone comes after Courteney Cox's face on my timeline, you are getting blocked. Like, leave her the fuck alone.
Yeah. We spent a fair amount of time yesterday talking about how we like to talk about women's bodies, particularly in Hollywood. There are certain things that drive actresses to change the way that they look and talk and dress and so on. You don't often see a lot of that in interviews with male actors, and there's a reason.
Oh, yes, 100%. And also, I will even say that while Courteney Cox does look different than how she looked in Scream 1, 2, 3, I think she looks really good in this movie.
I think she looks great in this movie. Yeah. Okay, so speaking of Courteney Cox and Gail, we briefly get a glimpse of her as she is basically sleeping in as Sheriff Dewey, played by David Arquette, gets out of bed.
And, okay, so insert one deleted scene here. I mentioned this yesterday, but I really think this should have been left in. We have Gail brushing her teeth, and Dewey's, like, finishing peeing, and he asks her if she's going to go to Sid's book signing, and she replies, well, has she ever been to one of mine? And he says, you know, oh, like, you know, I just think it would be really nice if you go. I can't go since I have work. But then he catches himself, and he's like, oh, I mean, not that you don't work, because she's trying to write a book. And she just, like throws her hands up and just walks away. So it's a little moment, but again, it automatically establishes that they are on the rocks, which may make their quibbles as the film goes on make more sense. And it just, again, it's just more, it's 30 seconds more of Gail and Dewey.
Yeah, I think it gives us just a bit more insight. I mean, I think we can lose this and still very much understand where they're at in their marriage based on the other interactions. But there's something about the only time that we see them in a domestic setting is when they're not even interacting in the final film, if we don't have this deleted scene.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So as Dewey exits the house, he is almost run over by Kirby, who is played by Hayden Panettiere, and she is not paying attention as she's driving. She is en route to pick up Olivia, who is played by Marielle Jaff, and Jill, Emma Roberts, who is quickly established as Sydney's cousin. And then they get a Ghostface call. And this scene ends with a jump scare as Kirby nearly runs a stop sign and they get nailed by a truck.
I will say that this jump scare did get me the first time I saw this movie because your guard was down because, there's talking in a car while that can happen, and I 100% jumped. Again, it's a little detail. I love that they call her Marnie the Carney. Like, it's Britt Robertson.
It's so rude.
But I'm like, what? I honestly want to know, why is she, like, what has she done to make her go Marnie the Carney?
Okay, so my theory is that they all went to a carnival sometime and she either fell in love with a carnival worker or they felt like she would fit right in with the atmosphere.
Once a carny, always a carny.
Yeah. And if you want to hear us talk more about carnies, we do have an episode on Nightmare Alley where we also talk about Snoozy Mara.
But she's doing better work in that than she is in Nightmare on Elm Street.
This is true. Yeah. So go hit the Patreon if you want to hear us talk about that.
So these new characters, yes, Jill, Kirby, Olivia. Obviously, like, we will talk about Jill and Kirby. Olivia does get the short end of the stick when it comes to screen time, character development, really anything in this movie.
Yeah, you could almost say she takes a back seat.
She really does. And I understand that critique, but for me, I'm also kind of like, yeah, but, like, it's comparable for me with Sarah Michelle Gellar in Scream 2. Like,
yeah.
Sarah Michelle Gellar gets one scene in that film class, and then she gets her death scene, which admittedly she has more to do because she gets that long-ass phone call. Olivia doesn't get the phone call, so I can see that, but honestly for me, it's whatever. She's a side character. Like, there's already so many characters in this movie. I don't need more Olivia.
Yeah, it sounds a little mean to say, but I also don't need a little bit more Olivia if she's going to be the first death after all of this. Like, she's basically the first main character, quote unquote, that we lose. And oftentimes it's somebody of this kind of stature, right? Like, we get to know them for a scene, maybe two, then they're out. And that's fine. Would I have liked a little bit more to establish who she is? Sure, whatever. Yeah. But if it comes at the extent of maybe getting additional scenes with Robbie or Charlie or Trevor or those kinds of things where it's like, these are characters who survive longer, I would rather have those.
Yeah, and the only deleted scene that she's in is the fountain scene, which we'll talk about later. But, like, even then, it's like, she knows movies. Like, that is her thing. Like, she is...
They're all media literate. Let's move on.
She gets the name drop Final Destination and boom, we're out. Let's go.
Right, yeah. Oh, actually, I wonder if that's the time travel.
This would have come out the same year that Final Destination 5 did.
Okay, so probably not then.
I don't know, maybe. I mean, there's no time travel. Oh, wait, no, but that is a prequel. I don't know. Maybe?
It was like real time. I was watching the cogs move around in your head.
Spoiler alert for Final Destination 5.
That ship has sailed. If you folks have not watched it by now, come on.
Shame on you.
Shame for shame. Okay, so let's meet another new character, Deputy Judy Hicks, played by Marley Shelton. She is supervising the removal of Ghostface masks from around the town square. I love this visual touch. Woodsboro is this beautiful place. Like, Woodsboro looks great. I know it's not the same place that they shot it in Scream 1, but it really, really does look similar. And it looks so picturesque, but there's still this sense of tragedy every year. And also, these teenagers are kind of shit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the town has such a horrible history, and you're putting up Ghostface masks on every streetlight.
With the town, talking about how it's similar to, like, 1, I think it's always this central, I mean, it's not Central Park, but, like, this park area with a gazebo, and then we also have a gazebo at the college at Scream 2. So, again, like, even though I know the college is in wherever Windsor College is.
Fictitious Windsor College, yes.
But yeah, no, it's always this central, like, gazebo park area that links them, except for Scream 3, but Judy, okay, so we talked about her yesterday because we're like, okay, we love Judy. Her entrance, she's like, her first line is, I wish I was old enough to be part of the force when you were solving those crimes, those intense investigations that really bring people together. Which, okay, I got your number, bitch. But she follows it up with that lemon square line, which is like, you're not, I'm sorry, as y'all may have heard on our new intro for the year, you're not cheating on your wife if you eat one of my lemon squares. And it's so funny.
Honestly, okay, so I said yesterday in part one, I didn't love Judy as a character the first time around. Yeah. I kind of thought that she was just a bit of a bland red herring. I have since come around to Marley Shelton, but it's such a funny character and such a weird performance. I was watching deleted scenes and Brian, my husband, was like, what is with her affectation and the way that she is saying things? Is she meant to be a red herring? And I was like, A, yes, but also B, that is just this wild comedic performance that Shelton is giving in this movie. And the fact that, she's basically introduced offering a sexual euphemism in the form of a pastry. What a character.
But I'm not saying that this weird thing she's doing is bad. I just don't know the reasoning behind her doing this and Wes Craven directing her to do this. And again, I'm not complaining. I just don't get it.
Oh, I'm very certain that there are people who probably watch this, they come in cold and they go, she's in a completely different movie.
No, she is. And again, not as much as Mary McDonnell, but she is.
We also have reasons for that, yes. Okay, so Gail is back at home. She is out of bed. She's kind of collected herself. She's at the computer. She's watching Sydney talk to, fucking hell, Nancy O'Dell. Honestly, there's something I would be happy to not have in the new Scream film. I don't need Nancy O'Dell to make another appearance in this franchise.
Do you not like, I only know her from these films. I literally had to Google her and be like, oh, okay, Entertainment Tonight from 2011 to 2019, but do you not like her for some reason? Is she...
It's just so hacky to me. I see her in a scene with Gail, and I'm like, oh, Gail is a mockery of people like Nancy O'Dell.
Ooh, I love scary movies.
Exactly. Like, okay, sure. Thanks for coming out, Nancy.
I will say, and I'm getting like really specific here, the one thing that does bother me with this scene is that when Gail is like, I have no fucking idea what to write.
I don't like it.
Well, I don't mind that, but what does bother me is that when the words finish appearing on the screen, she is still typing.
She's still typing, yeah. Also, as someone who has struggled a lot with writer's block over the years, you wouldn't write the whole sentence. You would just be like, blah, 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 and then you would like slam the keyboard down and go and get more coffee. Like, if you want to be accurate, please.
I do, because Sydney and Gail have an arc in this film. Well, maybe Gail the most compared to Sydney, because Sydney's is really dependent on Jill.
Right.
Dewey doesn't really get an arc either.
Not really. If anything, what I've come to take away from the three adults in this movie is that they've actually gotten to a place where they kind of know what they're doing. And that's the difference between them and their teenage counterparts. Like, Gail is frustrated, but she ultimately comes to realize what she's good at is being involved in these murder investigations. She's not good as a stay-at-home book writer. Sydney is thriving as a survival person, however you want to call that. I was about to say survivalist. I'm like, nope, that's not quite right.
No.
And then Dewey he's done the best, which I think is why he doesn't have an arc, because he's not trying to prove himself. He is the sheriff. He is the sheriff of Woodsboro, and he is going around just trying to ensure the safety and protection of the people in the town.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Whereas all these teens are hot fucking messes. It's like a very gentle reminder, hey, when you're a teenager, you're messed up and you're really focused on dumb shit like whether your teenage boyfriend has cheated on you or whether you should make a move about the hot girl in AV Club.
Speaking of these teenagers, we are now introduced to more of them.
Yeah, so we transition to the high school and we are introduced to Hall Pass host Robbie, who is played by another Canadian, Eric Knudsen, as well as Charlie, played by Rory Culkin, and they are there to annoy the girls.
I have never put this together because Eric Knudsen is Donnie Wahlberg's son in Saw 2, but we have that mention of Saw 4 in Stab 6.
Yeah, it's funny. So I had watched Eric Knudsen I don't know if it had come out at this time, but he was on a relatively well-known genre show in Canada called Continuum with Rachel Nichols, and he actually gets to do some really heavy lifting emotionally, and it's interesting to watch him in this because it's a bit of a bland character. Like, I don't love Robbie, and I have many thoughts to say about his maybe queerness and maybe not queerness, but Robbie is the character where every time I see him and Charlie in this movie, I think, I just need to know more about these boys. They don't have characters.
Well, because the thing is, the Randy archetype is split between Charlie, Robbie, and Kirby.
Yeah.
And so, because I kept seeing people be like, oh yeah, like Charlie's the Randy. And I was like, no, Kirby's the Randy. I was like, oh, well, no, I guess Charlie is the Randy.
Yeah. No, you're right. They really all three of them are. And in that deleted scene at the fountain, Olivia is also kind of a bit of a Randy.
Yeah. And so that's just the thing where it's like, I mean, Olivia dies early, but the non-issue you have with Olivia where you're like, I don't need more of her because she's like she's the first death of like the main cast is not the case for Robbie. And so it's like, oh, but like the movie doesn't give him anything to do.
Yeah. I can understand why we didn't just have Charlie, because I think they were very actively trying to say, oh, Randy does not become Charlie and murder people.
Right.
We really didn't want to go there, that the movie fanatics are the people who kill people. But in some ways, I think it would have been more successful to have had a boy geek and a girl geek and just keep it at that.
Yeah. Would have been simpler. Would have had one less death or set piece, or you apply that death or set piece to, I don't know, someone else. But yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you about Robbie. He's just not the most memorable part of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, kids are acting like kids, and then they go inside, and we're getting little hints that Jill has a relationship problem with a boy named Trevor. And after Jill goes to bat for Charlie, I had never noticed that before, but Jill actually makes a number of comments about how Charlie's not that bad to Kirby. And it's, I think in hindsight, very much her trying to, I guess, sweeten the water, or...
I think she's being sadistic. She's like, let me push them closer so that when he betrays her, it hurts even worse.
Okay, you know what? I like that a lot better. Yeah, so let's go with that.
Because, I mean, again, spoiler, sorry for anyone who, like, I don't know, whatever. Jill is a sociopath, and she is gives no shits about anyone but herself.
She's a teenage girl. Yes.
I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, okay, so Kirby leaves, and then we are introduced to Jill's question mark ex-boyfriend / current boyfriend. They're in a bad place, Trevor, and he is played by Nico Tortorella. And I'm also going to acknowledge that if we didn't have enough queer content in this film, Nico eventually came out as gender fluid, so we've got more queer representation in the cast.
I really like Nico Tortorella. So I remember whenever they did the Celebrity RuPaul's Drag Race, and so many members of the queer community were like, shut the fuck up, Nico. Because Nico is in a straight passing relationship, and I feel like some members of our community really begrudge that, because they're like, oh, you're taking our label, but you're not, fuck it. Like, I really like them. I find them very charming. It bothers me when I see members of our community go after them just because. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot to do in this movie. Craven does say in the commentary that some of the scenes they cut out with them were because they were pointing too much to them as a red herring.
Yeah, I can see it too.
I can kind of see it. I just don't really think they're given enough good material, because the one big scene with Trevor that's cut out is the one with Trevor and Jill at the hospital. Right. And it's not a really good scene. It's really boring. So it's like...
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe we'll just quickly talk about it here. I don't remember having seen it before, but when I watched that deleted scene today, I thought, oh, part of this is actually really good, because it does give Trevor a little bit more to do, but then it just keeps going and going, and you're like, oh, okay, I think the hospital security guards would have been on hand when the teenage girl who just got stabbed is screaming at her ex-boyfriend in a hospital, but...
Well, one touch I did like, though, in that scene is that Mary McDonnell is there, and she, like, motions for Trevor to come over, so she's, like, in cahoots with Trevor.
Yeah, well, that's... okay. So here is my issue with the Trevor character in general. You're right that Nico doesn't get a ton to do, and when they are on the screen, what we're often seeing is Trevor being shady as fuck, right? It's always weird glances and kind of like menacing facial expressions and so on. And that makes sense, right? Scream movies are whodunits. We need red herrings. We need suspects. So Trevor is very obviously the Skeet Ulrich of this film. The problem is that there's also this cheating storyline that pops up. Like, that's where the friction between Jill and Trevor comes from. But it doesn't ever get explored. Like, we never know the nature of the cheating. Yeah. And even when we get to the end where Jill is very clearly a sociopath. Her motivation is to become famous and be the sole survivor. But she has that line before she kills Trevor where she says, I am not the girl you cheat on. And I'm just like, Jill would not be driven by this because she doesn't give a shit about that.
Okay, I mean, I know we're jumping ahead, but no, with that, I took it as she says that as the reason for shooting him in the dick. Not for framing him.
Okay. I guess I feel like it's an extra thing that the film doesn't explain and it doesn't feel needed.
You are 100% correct. And you're right, the nature of the cheating, because she says, like, you get a girl, you kiss her, and then you go out with someone else. I was like, okay, wait, so he, like, went out with someone else, like, on a date? Did they fuck? Like, what?
Yeah.
What happened?
What happened? I think it makes sense, as Ari kind of pointed us to, this film began with the intent of being a remake, sort of first and foremost. Like, that was the original iteration when Kevin Williamson wrote the script. And I feel like there are certain parts of the script that really reposition everybody as, like, Jill is the Sydney and Trevor is the Billy. Right. So that's why we're getting some of this relationship drama. And when the film starts to move more into a critique / satire of teenagers and their fame hungry nature and so on, some of that maybe needed to be either cut off or finessed a little bit more. But
I will say, though, that while I never suspected Jill as the killer in this movie,
no, absolutely
I also never for 1 second
He's too obvious. Trevor is too obvious.
Way too obvious. And it's just like, no.
Which is what surprises me. Yes, Wes Craven clearly identified we have too much of Trevor being shady as fuck, so we remove some of those scenes. But the problem is even in the scenes that he's still in, he's always just doing that. So you're like, oh, well, it's too obvious. It's obviously not him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so next up is the book thing, but there is one more deleted scene before that, and that is when we have Dewey and Judy and Haas and Perkins finding the bodies of Marnie and Jenny M.
Holy shit. I remember the Entertainment Weekly spread with Marnie's body hanging and then going into the film and being very confused.
Well,
where is this gore? Where's the gore?
They had this image like everywhere. I mean, this was over all publicity. I mean, also the trailers, like they had the fountain scene. Like, it's really fucked up. But also, like, this scene, you don't need it to know why they go to the bookstore, because they tell you we've traced the call, whatever. Right. But I really think that this scene could have been left in. You know, we also have Wes Craven's cameo in this deleted scene. We have, it's a hunting knife, and you're seeing the as you say, the cogs turn in Dewey's head when he's like, fuck, like, is this a random killing or is this connected to everything?
Oh, interesting. Because that was actually the part where I thought if I kept this scene, I would have trimmed it to have not included the stuff with the knife, because that doesn't feel necessary. But you're right that this would be Dewey realizing, oh, this isn't just a murder. This is the start of something new.
Yeah, be it connected to Sydney or a copycat, which even if it's a copycat, it's connected to Sydney.
But I guess I'm just like, I can't believe that you would spend all the time and money to get these lifelike dummies, because that Marnie dummy looks so good.
Yeah, and put in your back pocket, her being hanged from the ceiling fan is important.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I have no idea where you're going with that.
Trust me, and maybe you'll laugh at me when I explain it, but we're getting there. Okay.
So we are now at the book reading, and Gail stops by. This is the first interaction that we've had between Gail and Sydney. And it's curt, it's fast, but it's good to see them acknowledging each other in a different way.
Yeah, and we haven't seen them together, obviously, since the end of Scream 3, but I always forget, because I hate this character. Where's Detective Kincaid? Where's Patrick Dempsey in this movie?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I mean, I think the two characters who are absent, who absolutely need to be explained, is Detective Kincaid, who doesn't come up at all, and also Sydney's father, who we glossed over it, but I think we mentioned it in part 1, that there's recognition that Neil Prescott has died between Scream 3 and Scream 4, but it doesn't make any sense if you don't have that in here somewhere, because why is Sydney's dad not mentioned in this film?
So that is in the Gail Dewey bathroom scene at the very beginning, where he says that it would be nice if you came to her book signing, it's her first time back in town since her dad died. And it's like that seems like important information that
maybe just a little important, considering everything about this movie reconfirms that the killer is targeting Sydney and it is about family. It's like, well, she has a family member in Woodsboro.
We also don't really have Sydney, to my knowledge, acknowledge her mother in this movie, except in a deleted scene that we come up to later.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's these little moments, right, where you're thinking, okay, well, she's back in Woodsboro, right? It's not LA. It's not Windsor College. She's back in her hometown. We need to address some of this family stuff.
Yeah. Well, again, you have Maureen Prescott's sister as a character in this movie.
Who's never been mentioned before until this film.
Right. And you said, in part one, like, maybe Ari said this, but she's supposed to be the kid sister. So she's like a distant age gap between them. But it's like,
Sydney is still staying at their fucking house.
Yeah. Like, the fact that we don't really get a Sid-Kate deep conversation, which I guess it's like, slowing down the pacing or whatever, but
always.
It still would have been nice.
I know. And these are, I think, the differences between what the fans want and need and studio executives saying, like, can we please get to the Olivia kill scene? We need to move this along.
100%.
But also, we're right, obviously.
Yeah. Yes, we are.
Okay, yeah, so things are going swimmingly, and then Dewey sweeps in with Hicks and all the other deputies because they are looking for a missing phone connected to the crime scene. They open up Sid's trunk. They find bloody glossies of her book art, as well as a knife and a cellular telephone.
Yes. Oh, the only thing I will say again about this damn filter.
Okay.
It looks its worst in this scene, specifically when Gale walks into the bookstore. There are just beams of light exiting her body.
She's glowing, Trey. She's radiant.
She's literally glowing.
She's never looked better. Fuck you, Sydney. Look at how good I look.
I got these glows coming off my face, fucker. Shoot the fucker.
Oh, boy. Yeah, okay, so Sydney, her car is now a crime scene, which always reminds me of Joel getting his van impounded in number 2. So we cut back to the high school. We're in the classroom scene that Ari mentioned with the original red herring faculty member. This is his one and only scene now. Yeah. And the phones explode as everybody learns about the murder, and reporters descend on the scene. And this is all very Scream 1, right? Like, we've got reporters back on campus doing their live reporting, and the students are all just kind of mystified. Whoa, what's happening?
Yes, and this is about when the fountain scene would have happened. And
right.
It's a fun little homage to the original film. I think the reason they cut it, because, they're just talking. That's all it is. Everyone except for Jill is here.
Yes.
There's a part, and they mention, Laurie died in Halloween's Resurrection, Ripley died in Alien 3, but Trevor's like, dude, this isn't a movie. And Charlie goes, it will be, which is exactly what the killer is about to say to Sydney when Olivia dies.
Oh, so you think maybe it was cut because it's too obvious that it would be Charlie?
Yeah, I think because it's too close to that scene where I think people would be like, oh, that's what Charlie just said.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, because when I watched this, I thought, this is a great scene. I understand why they cut it again for pacing, but this is the only time we see all of them together because Trevor really doesn't interact with many of the rest of them until the final party, and Olivia doesn't interact with any of them except for Jill and Kirby.
But also, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because when we meet Robbie and Charlie, they don't seem to be friends with Kirby, Olivia, and Jill. So why would they be sitting at the fountain with them,
Yeah, that is fair.
So, I don't know.
Okay, so then we cut to the police station, and this is where the iconic Gale versus Deputy Judy scene. And then Dewey reminds his wife that she is not a reporter. So we haven't really gotten too much of a sense of the nature of Dewey and Gale's relationship. But this is very much like, oh, okay, so Gale is struggling.
Yeah, which I do understand Dewey's side of this, right? It's like, dude, I'm literally the lead investigator. I cannot be telling my reporter wife details of this case. I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely. Like, sorry, just because you're married doesn't give you access to privileged information because it could actually compromise the integrity of any outcome. Like, if your wife is reporting on the scene before you arrest someone, that could be used against you as like a person who's investigating the crime.
Absolutely. Like, Gale does not get that. So she's definitely in the wrong here.
Yeah. I actually feel like Gale is kind of in the wrong for most of this. And I think one of the reasons I don't like it is because it makes Gale into a bit of a harpy shrew.
It doesn't bother me that much, if only because I'm like, well, let's pretend that after her Stab 3 book came out,
okay,
she had nothing. Like, she settled in
She
Woodsboro.
goes
It's her
dry.
worst nightmare. Like, I don't disagree that she dips into Harpy Shrew territory, but I buy that would happen to her after being in Woodsboro for a decade.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's mostly just I don't like her directing it towards Dewey because I've always liked their relationship. But yeah, I don't disagree that she would be frustrated. And yeah, as we all know, you take it out on the person you love. So Dewey would be in the crosshairs.
Well, I mean, he's like partially responsible for her being there in her mind, right? Because she
was trying to be in fucking Woodsboro.
Yeah. But I will say, Gale gets some really good zingers in this movie, probably like the most out of any of the franchise. But we get or that you bake him those little treats, as you do. I don't know why the delivery of that, and of course have you heard of the phrase, I wrote the book on this? Like,
slam. Yeah, there's also a line, I can't quite remember what she says. I think it's when she's saying, like, I solved this 3 times, and you see Dewey kind of have to look up, like, how many times have we done this?
The cogs are turning.
Yes, the cogs are turning. Yeah, so Gale storms off. She says she's going to go rogue. She'll do it herself. And then we transition into this interview with Jill, Olivia, and Kirby. And I would actually argue that you could have trimmed this or done this a little bit more expediently. I think the only reason this is in here is so that we can actually get Jill and Sydney interacting.
Yes, although I will say that Kirby's delivery of, it was the killer's voice from Stab, or, your life, is really good delivery from Hayden Panettiere.
I mean, I'm not going to say that the women run away with this movie, but the delivery of Alison Brie, Courteney Cox, Hayden Panettiere, just fucking dynamite on the line deliveries. So good.
Yeah, but I do agree. This seems like it goes on a little bit too long. But again, it's still really fun to be like, oh, like, did the killer didn't call me? Am I not going to live as long as her? Maybe. No? Oh, But it's okay, because this is just an appetizer for the Rebecca and Gale scene.
Yeah, so as Gale storms out, she runs into Rebecca, and Rebecca fangirls over her, but it's very similar to the way that Dewey awkwardly introduced himself to Gale back in the first Scream, where it's like, try not to call her old, even as you admire her. And of course, this is the closest that we get to an iconic Scream punch/slap between two women. And I did hear on the commentary that they really wanted to work in a scene where Sydney could hit or punch Gale, but it just didn't work out organically. And I don't think it would have worked given the nature of their relationship, but I do like that we kind of almost get there with Rebecca and Gale.
Well, and it probably would have worked in the draft of the script that Ari was describing, where Sydney was more hardened and abrasive towards Gale.
For sure.
I will say, because I was doing them, I had to go look at this up. As listeners may know, you and I, Joe, are really big fans of Cougar Town and Community as well.
So good.
So listeners, if you don't know, there was like a gag through Community where one of the characters, Danny Pudi's Abed, was obsessed with Cougar Town. And then he ended up getting a cameo, like the actor got a cameo in Cougar Town, but then Busy Phillips from Cougar Town went over to Community. And I'm wondering, because both of those shows began in 2009, they both ended in 2015, and I just wonder if Courteney Cox and Alison Brie, like, brokered that deal.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I will confess, Alison Brie is the weird casting choice in this film for me. I wouldn't have ever thought to have put her into A, a Scream role, or B, this particular role. So it's very much casting against type. I think she absolutely kills it. She's fantastic in this role.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's always a marvel. Like, how did you stumble upon this person for this role? I mean, I think everybody just wants to be in a Scream film, so she probably campaigned for it.
But it mirrors, because it mirrors Courteney Cox's role, because she was playing, kind of anal retentive Monica on Friends. Oh, I want to play a bitch. Well, you have Alison Brie playing anal retentive Annie on Community. She wants to play a bitch.
Fair. Just let it be known to Hollywood, actresses want to play the bitch. Let them play the bitch.
100%. So we move to the house. There's another deleted scene that happens before our scars conversation. I think it's mostly okay. Basically, we have Hicks going through Kate's room. She apologizes to Kate, and Kate's like, "Oh yeah, going through all my stuff, blah 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 blah."
Yeah.
that's whatever. But we do have this moment of Sydney looking at pictures of her mother on Kate's mantle. Rebecca walks in and goes, "Oh, who's that?" And she goes, "It's my mom."
And Rebecca's on her phone the entire time, which really foreshadows when Sydney says, like, "Have you even read my book?" And Rebecca says, "Well, I was gonna kind of wait for, like, the audiobook of the movie."
It would have tied in better. But again, I just like this little moment of Sydney looking at pictures of her mom.
Yes, 100%.
It just would have been nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we don't get that. We just get Kate making dinner, and upstairs Dewey and Sid are catching up. And I actually really like this scene because when you think back to the other films, Dewey and Sydney are always really there for each other. Like, they have the others back in a very emotionally supportive way. So I was really happy that we get this quiet moment with the two of them.
Yeah, I agree. It's also really, there's a smile David Arquette does when he's like, when he reads the quote from her book, and he's just beaming. Like, it's just kind of a really goofy smile, but it's so sweet. And it really goes to show, like, the charm that Arquette imbues into this franchise.
Yeah, like, we shit on him a lot because he's not as fun to talk about as either Sydney or Gale, but there's a reason why people like Arquette in this role. It's because he is bringing that emotional vulnerability, and he's sweet. He is such a nice guy. And also, all I can think about is it must be nice for Dewey to finally read something nice about himself in a book because he's so used to his wife trashing him.
I didn't even think about that, but you're spot on.
Oh boy. So Sydney then walks in on Trevor and Jill. So Trevor has very much done the Billy Loomis thing of sneaking into his girlfriend's room.
I'm sorry. Do you want to comment on the scars line? Maybe
I don't.
we already did it. We did it enough yesterday, but it's just a weird delivery. It's just really weird.
It's a weird delivery, yeah. And we'll, again, if people need us to unpack it, we'll talk about it a little bit more later.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Sydney walks in on Trevor and Jill. So I do think that this is the best that Nico is doing in their performance as Trevor because it's the right amount of menace, but also you can tell that Trevor is fascinated by the idea of Sydney, and this really leans into the thing that Jill is ultimately looking for and willing to kill for, the obsession with the person who survives and what they're like in person and how they have a kind of aura that attracts people to them.
Yes, I mean...
You're like, well, no. But
nah, I mean, I don't disagree. I like it more when Sydney comes in, because for me, this scene is more about Sydney and Jill. Like, I love that moment where she's like, "Oh, you remind me of myself."
Yes, it's really good.
And yeah, like, you're right. This is mirroring, Billy sneaking into Sid's window in Scream 1, blah, 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 blah. But it although I do like Trevor's dig, you're smaller in person.
It's such a dick thing to say, and very similar to what we often say when we see celebrities. Oh, I always thought that they would be taller.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise. It's also a bit of a meta joke when you know that Emma Roberts is apparently very, very short, so they had her wear lifts in all of her shoes for this movie.
That is not surprising. Again, people are always like, well, which ones does Jill kill? Because the killer's never as short as Emma Roberts is. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck, man.
Oh, God.
It's a stunt guy.
Oh, also, we will be playing that game. So,
okay.
Who do you think killed Marnie and Jenny?
I think it's Charlie. Okay, I actually think it's Charlie for everyone except for the mom and Hoss and Perkins.
Okay, yes. Yeah, it's very much, I think, Charlie for Marnie and Jenny, because he, at the end of the film, talks about the footage that he collected of deaths, and it could just be their footage, like him and Jill's, but I think it seems far more obvious that he is the one who killed them because he's talking about that footage.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. So after Jill and Sydney have this kind of heart-to-heart, Sydney exits, and we get this very creepy interaction with Judy where she talks about knowing Sid because they went to high school and they were in a production of Peter Pan. And it's great, weird stuff for Shelton to play, but I really just want to highlight the lighting in this scene is fucking amazing.
I'm really glad you mentioned that because, yeah, when we see Judy, it's like she's dark from the waist up. Like, she is framed in a way that is very menacing. Really happy that this didn't come out after 2015 because Sydney Prescott playing Tiger Lily.
Sydney, you've been canceled. Sorry.
Another Rooney Mara joke going in there.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
But no, I agree with you. I think it is weird. This scene is weird. Judy is weird.
She's just a weird girl. and I kind of love that because Scream gives room for some of these sort of character actors or second build actors to play. Like, I'm thinking back to our love of Portia de Rossi's delivery of like, oh, hello, Pledge. And
yes,
just like Scream loves to give these little moments. And I love that Judy gets to do that, but she is actually a proper supporting character in this movie. Like, she gets a lot of stuff to play. And I think that Marley Shelton, it is so weird. It can be off-putting, but the more time passes, the more I think, God damn, she is having a great time in this film.
And that's the thing, too, because I am shocked as much as anyone that she is returning for Scream 2022.
I know.
I am so happy about it.
Delighted. Can't wait. I'm afraid they're going to kill her, but you know what? At least we'll get a bit more of this character.
I have my theories. I will explain them in our Patreon episode.
I see. Okay. Okay, so I haven't talked about them. You have mentioned them, but let's formally address Deputies Perkin, who is played by Anthony Anderson, as well as Deputy Huss, who is played by Adam Brody. They are the two deputies who are charged with sitting outside the Roberts house. I like both these actors. I don't give two shits about these characters.
Yeah, I don't really care. I learned today that the character names are Anthony Perkins, and Ross Haas.
Oh my god.
And there is more in the deleted scenes, like both with them interacting with Gail, with them interacting with Judy, with them interacting with Dewey. And I don't know if having those scenes back in the movie would make me care about them more.
I don't think so.
They're like Sydney's bodyguards in Scream 2, right? They're just there. Yeah. They're bodies.
Yeah, except that they're cast with famous actors this time around. So I think that's my issue. If these were nothing actors, oh my God, that sounds so disparaging. If these were less known actors, I probably wouldn't care because I would just be able to say, oh, okay, I don't know them. They're immaterial. That's fine. But here I'm just like, wait, why did we cast these two really talented actors, give them frankly kind of garbage material, and then just kill them off in not exciting ways?
So it's the exact opposite problem you have with Marielle Jeff playing Olivia.
Little bit. Yeah. I needed triple the Marielle Jeff. I needed like doubles of her playing these two cops. Okay, so yeah, they're sitting outside, and this is where Jill and Kirby are talking to Olivia on the phone. They're watching Shaun of the Dead. Again, I do think it would have been more fun to have had them watching a different stab movie.
Yeah, I agree.
Damn it. And then this is where Ghostface calls. So we start to get a protracted kind of three-way conversation. In the director's commentary, I think it's Hayden Panettiere talks about how intricate the blocking of this was to shoot because they needed to be revealing the window, revealing the closet at very specific times. And it's funny because when you watch it, it looks like it's just Hayden Panettiere on the phone.
Yeah.
And then when you think about how cleverly Craven had to shoot this and get the timing right, it's actually quite the production.
Well, it's these little things that you don't take into account when watching a film, but you can see, even hearing that when it's like, oh, you can see the work that Craven went to make sure. And we've talked about how Craven establishes geography very well. So
so good.
When doing a suspense scene, when doing a chase scene, you know who is where and what is where in relation to other wheres. And I didn't even think about that with this scene, but you're 100. You and Hayden Panettiere are very correct.
Yes, it's me and Hayden Panettiere. We're both always correct. So I will say this scene got me so fucking good the first time I watched this movie in the theater because I 100% thought that he was in her closet. Never even occurred to me that it would be in Olivia's. Like, it is such a fantastic bait and switch. What, you're going to disagree with me on this?
No. I think it's a really good bait and switch, but for me personally, because that scene of her moving the clothes in the closet was in every fucking trailer,
okay.
I knew that was coming. I will say, again, on top of Gail getting really good zingers, Ghostface gets really good zingers, because one of my biggest laughs in this movie is when it's like the third time that she's like, I don't know, Trevor's being weird. This is fucking Trevor!
Bitch, I'm really frustrated. I'm trying to threaten your life right now. Can you please pay attention?
It's so funny. But while I may disagree, because again, I saw that it wasn't in their closet, like, but I'm not discounting the overall effectiveness of this scene if you didn't know that going in.
Okay. Okay.
What did get me, though, is Olivia's death scene. Like, this girl...
Holy shit.
Okay.
I have never seen a move like this in Scream. It is so bloody and gory.
I mean, we see intestines in her body,
Yes.
but so she is stabbed in the chest immediately, then she's stabbed in the hand, then she's kicked into a dresser, then she's thrown into her vanity in the mirror, then she's stabbed in the back, then she's thrown on the bed and just stabbed repeatedly.
Stabbed and stabbed and stabbed. The blood is everywhere. When Sydney walks into this room, because obviously, you know, Jill and Kirby are freaking out. I know people have actually taken screen captures of Jill on the phone and how she is like hiding it.
Yeah, she's filming the murder. It's so good.
Never even occurred to me. Like the fact that people even thought to look, and the fact that Wes Craven thought to put that in so that if you paused it just right, you could see his No, sorry, that's a different movie. Yeah, I again, just hats off to Wes Craven for this. But yeah, when Sydney runs in because she tries to play savior.
Wait, sorry. When Sydney runs upstairs and, like, you know, he throws Olivia out the window, there's a moment where it closes in on Sydney and she realizes what's going on. And Beltrami's score, like, the horns come in and it's like, boom, boom, boom. This feels like the movie kicking into high gear for me, where it's like,
absolutely.
all right,
yeah,
it's real.
It is real, and people are getting absolutely brutally slaughtered. I do love that this feels like, yes, it's a Jenny McCarthy homage to Scream 3 when she gets kind of thrown through the door during her death scene. But to me, this feels so Argento-esque. Like, it feels like Tenebrae, it feels like Suspiria.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Scream films are bloody, but they've never been particularly gory outside of, well, Steve Orth's kill and Drew Barrymore in that first scene. I think that's the bloodiest the franchise has been until this.
Yeah. This is brutal. It's rough. So Sydney runs in, and it looks like someone has just spray painted the walls with red. It is super impressive. I love that Ghostface calls her. She picks up the phone, and her response is just, "What?"
Oh, it's so good. I mean, this, because again, this is the moment you're waiting for as a fan. Like, all right, when's she going to get on the phone with this killer again? And, you know, he's doing movie lingo. Oh, preview of coming events. This isn't a fucking movie. It will be. But my favorite line really is this: I'm going to slit your eyelids in half so you don't blink when I stab you in the face.
Which is kind of another Argento reference if we're thinking of opera.
Yes, exactly. Oh, God, it's so fucking good. But yeah, this phone call is just... And we get another one later, which is also really good. But this phone call is so good.
Yeah, you're absolutely right when you say it feels like this is the movie kicking into gear. And it's not to say that everything before it has been less than. It's not that it's uninteresting. It's just the stakes are now really, really real.
Well, because at this point now everything has been set up. I mean, critics may have bemoaned the fact that this movie was quote-unquote too long. But we are at the point now where everything that has needed to be set up in terms of catching up with the old characters, introducing the new ones, like, we're done now.
Yes.
So
yeah, we're into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also like the fact that Ghostface chastises Sydney for leaving town and promising that she will die when he wants. And I'm saying he because we know for a fact that it's Charlie on the phone here.
Right.
But it's, again, sort of establishing the fact that Sydney is the focus. Like, yes, Olivia may have just been murdered. She's a peripheral character. This is about Sydney. Like, hi, Sydney, I brought you back to town so that I could brutally butcher this young girl. Are you enjoying her entrails?
It's so mean and it's so good. And Roger Jackson's voice has obviously aged in the, 15 years, 16 years since Scream came out, but it sounds rougher, but like in a good way. Yeah,
like Ghostface has gotten older somehow, even though we know that these are teen killers.
And I know we're not quite there yet, but this kick to the face that Sydney does.
Oh boy, yeah. So we just need to acknowledge, Jill runs in and she gets a pity me surface arm wound, much like Derek does in Scream 2.
Yes!
And then, Sydney just fucking goes for it. And I think that's one of the things that people really respond to in Scream 4 is that the trajectory for this character, like, everything about this movie is that Sydney is a survivor. She's not the Sydney in Scream 3 where she's hiding out in the country and she gets baited back into the action. This is Sydney literally running towards the danger to protect people because she is so done with being a victim. I love this fight scene with Ghostface they're falling downstairs, and she full on fucking kicks him, and it is amazing.
Cheers. I mean, I said yesterday, like, my theater was only a fourth full for this Thursday night midnight showing, but man, did the theater lose it at that fucking kick.
Yeah, because this is what we have always wanted for Sydney. Like, it's not that the character has ever been passive, but a lot of the dialogue that we have had with her in the previous films is how she is the perfect victim. And this honestly feels like, hey, did you think she was going to do the same thing? No, she's fucking kicking Ghostface in the face now.
Yeah, it's so good. I love this so much.
Yeah. So then other people rush in and Ghostface gets away. It's important to note that both Trevor and Kirby are very quickly on the scene. No one really questions, hey, Trevor, what were you doing so close to this crime scene? But I do like the moment where Jill orders Sydney to stay away from her because, of course, we've had Olivia referencing her as like Grandma Death and all these other things. So.
Yeah, and so, okay, so I'm coming in now. We have a trifecta of deleted scenes.
So many here, yeah.
So, yeah, we have outside, like, you know, Jill kind of apologizes to Sydney, but the first one we get is Kate runs outside, she's crying, and she goes to Sydney, oh my god, I drank some wine, I took a sleeping pill, I didn't hear a thing, I was so passed out. So that explains that.
Yeah, I would have liked to have kept that because there would have been so much noise with this attack, and everybody else responds, so the fact that Kate is just not on the scene in the final cut doesn't make sense.
But here's my one that I really wish they would have kept in. As they're wheeling out Olivia on a stretcher, Judy goes up to Dewey, and she says something, and she goes, oh, it's really weird about that pet door frame around her neck. And Dewey we don't see this in the movie, so no. I'm wondering if that's why they cut it, because they didn't have it in the scene. But basically, Dewey's thinking, he goes, my sister... Yeah. She was a victim in the original Woodsboro massacre. They found her body wedged in a pet door. And then he goes, in the trailer line, these aren't just random murders. And then he goes on, this is a Woodsboro remake. So that would be awesome to include in the film. But here's the other thing, and this is the piece I put together. At the press conference later, Gail asks, like, she raises her hand, she asks Dewey, she's like, you know, Sheriff Riley, whatever, what do you think about the fact that these murders are replicating the pattern of the original Woodsboro murders? And I was like, not really.
Where are you getting that from? Yeah.
I had no idea. Well, if you add in that fucking garage door bit,
right,
and the bit with Marnie hanged from the fan, which is like Drew Barrymore hanged from the goddamn tree, it kind of makes more sense.
And also kind of like Tatum.
Yes, yeah, like Tatum. And maybe Jenny was fucking like gutted in a chair somewhere. So that would have made more sense and make that line make more sense. I mean, again, it's not a plot hole by any means, but it's very much like a, Gail, where are you getting this from?
Yeah, it just kind of fills in a couple of things that have always made us go, what? But that doesn't entirely add up.
Well, and I think even in our Scream 2 episode, I bemoan the fact that, like, we
never talk about Tatum. Yeah.
Never talk about Tatum. We get that one line in Scream 2 where Courteney Cox goes, Tatum. And then the bit in Scream 3 when Patrick Warburton is like, butcher your little sister. But it's not Dewey he's talking to.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, this is actually Dewey referencing the fact that his sister died in Woodsboro.
The first time he has mentioned her outside of Scream 1. And I wish that would have been kept in. And also, I would have loved to see Olivia's body with a fucking pet door around her neck.
Yeah, because, I mean, we do actually get a reference, like a visual reference to it at the Stabathon. You can see in the background there's a doggy door with an artificial woman sort of posed halfway through it, which is just so gauche. But, I mean, it's not commented on. It's not lingered on. It's a blink and you miss it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we do actually get is Haas and Perkins apologizing because they were not really paying attention, which, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
And then we go to the hospital and Gail proposes a partnership to the Cinema Club idiots. So she says, hey, Charlie and Robbie, you guys are filming all this. Why don't we partner up? And they say, cool. Can you get us Sydney? Because she's the actual star.
So there is another little deleted scene here before she goes to Charlie and Robbie where she confronts Haas and Perkins and they're like, dude, like your husband told us no, like we cannot talk to you. And they go off and hang out with Judy, and then I think one of them just goes, good and evil, everyone has a dark side, and Judy goes, not Sheriff Riley. That's why he had to marry one.
Ugh. Happy for that to be edited out.
Yeah. But then, so when they brush her off, that's when she runs over to Charlie and Robbie.
Yeah, they're the second choice.
But then she gets that great because she's like, turn that camera off? No, turn that fucking thing off.
I'm just imagining Gail like having to demean herself by addressing these high school boys and just being like, I am not putting up with your shit. Because we see more of it in the cinema club. She's asking them to tell her where the Stabathon is.
The circle jerk.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, so we see Rebecca is talking to Sydney, and Rebecca is very excited by all of this action because she can book Sydney on additional dates because that is her job as a publicist. And she basically propositions Sydney as a professional victim. Like, you are now a victim for life. We can make so much money off of this. And this is where Sydney says, you know what, you're fucking fired.
I'm sorry, but the way that she describes Sydney's readers, all those little downtrodden fucks who just need a light at the end of the tunnel just so they don't jump off a bridge.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
I mean, if you didn't think that Rebecca was lacking empathy and more than a little cutthroat, I do think if we're thinking of the good and the dark, this is kind of the path that Gail could have gone down if she hadn't gone on a relationship with Dewey. Like, she would have ended up in this kind of role that Rebecca embodies.
I love to, it's not a reporter, it's PR, which honestly tracks.
Ooh, PR people, don't come after us.
PR reps, I love you. I love you.
But also sometimes you're a little cutthroat.
You know what? Fuck it. I have a degree in PR. I have done some PR. Yes, it's true.
Well, I think it's just it's a different line of work that demands that you are trying to constantly be on top of every news cycle and like look for angles because you're trying to get your client into every possible limelight.
Right.
Yeah. So let's follow Rebecca for a little bit as she is then immediately killed in the parking garage. And I just want to give a shout out to Alison Brie one last time, because obviously we're not going to get to talk about her too much more. The moment that she gets killed, she is giving fuck eyes at Ghostface. And I think it's hilarious because she has just talked about how Sydney needs to get laid and then she'll call her in the morning. And I'm just like, oh, this is a bit of, like, we've often joked about sex scenes and death scenes as being one and the same. But this honestly feels like, oh, did she have a little petit mort?
Yeah. And I think Craven even comments on that in the commentary too, where he's like, I don't know what she's doing here, but like, I like it. The one bit, it's when he's talking to her, you know, she's like, oh, like, if you want to be in the hospital, I'm happy to put you there in the morgue.
Such a classic Ghostface, like, oh, groaner Ghostface, come on.
It does. Okay, my issue is it does sound like it has been cut. Like, it sounds like he should be saying in the fucking morgue.
Yeah.
And in some of those fan edits that we discussed yesterday, I guess someone found, I don't know where they found it, but some of those edits have in the fucking morgue, and it sounds
better.
So much better. Because
interesting.
I mean, you know, like when you're editing something and like you cut a word out and like if like the volume isn't the right between from one word to the next, like you can tell there's an edit. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel with this scene.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was going down my rabbit hole doing research for this, I came across, and I gathered because we had a bunch of UK listeners reach out to us to say there's a huge number of audio edits in the release that they got compared to our theatrical cut. And it's weird because almost none of them make a huge difference, but it's all these plays on like just a word choice or this word is added in. And it's so much tinkering that when people said, oh, there's all these fan edits, I thought, oh, I wonder if they're just talking about the UK cut.
You might be right, and I wonder if that's actually where they got the soundbite from. Also, I'm sorry, rewinding, my husband did just text me. He goes, Ginny is indeed placed on a chair like Steve.
Yeah, she is. Scene. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that Ari, either we are so fucking loud that Ari can hear us when we record, or that he just like, I love the idea of him listening with a glass against the wall, like, when can I chime in here?
Oh, he did correct me too. It's Mariel Jaffe, not Jaff, so that's also on me.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Okay, so Rebecca is alas deceased now, and we cut to Dewey's press conference, which is taking place in front of the hospital, and then Rebecca drops in to the press conference, literally. And then this is when Gail uses the opportunity to make a shitty comment berating Dewey for icing her out of the investigation. And this is probably my least favorite of the Dewey-Gail interactions. It's like, a woman just plummeted off of the parking garage onto this news van, and you're using it as an opportunity to say, you should let me into the investigation. It's like, Gail, time and place.
I think, too, because this is right after she says, any comment on the fact that these killings seem to resemble the pattern of the original Woodsboro murders. Who is Rebecca mimicking? She's mimicking Kenny in the van.
Yeah.
So that...
Gail, you have a relationship to this particular murder.
There is a bit of ADR here, though, when she's leaving, and you can just, like, it's clearly ADR name. She's like, move it, amateurs!
It's true. Yeah, I gathered there's a lot of ADR that got put into this in the various edits, because there's a lot of times where you hear comments and it's just people kind of moving through crowds or that kind of stuff. I would have liked I was gonna make a joke of, Rebecca, get off my fucking Guccia.
Oh my god. You should have followed through with that. That was really good.
Okay, so let's cut to the next day at Cinema Club. We've got Charlie and Robbie holding court. They are so delighted to have both Sydney and Gail in the audience, and this is where we get the mandatory compulsory scream sequence of talking about the new rules for whatever we are living through.
And in case you were wondering why the fuck is Sydney here, how did Gail get her here, there is a deleted scene where she's like, hey Sid, let's team up and work together, and Sid's like, okay.
Sure. Yeah, it's another one of those things where just having a little bit more of Sid and Gail interaction would have been appreciated. We don't need it because we just accept that, yes, Sydney has been brought along to this because we heard them say, we want Sydney. So if Gail is there, then presumably she brought her.
She got Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, it's like, you want more Gail and Sydney, that's like 20 seconds of a scene that you could just put back in.
There we go. Give us that 20 seconds. So what do we think about these new rules? Because really it all kind of boils down to the difference is that remakes are out, cliche is passé, and really the big new thing that people should be doing, it's two things. The major one is that the killer would be filming the murders or live streaming them. And the other minor one is that if you wanted to survive, it would help to be gay.
So yeah, this is our big queer aspect of the film. I don't really have much to say about the rules, honestly, because they're not really as ironclad or concrete as what we would get in Scream 1 or 2, or fuck, maybe even 3, honestly. I think those are the most loosely defined in terms of the rules. But, yeah, this gay thing.
Yeah, so this is one of the things we'll have a bit more to say when we get to Robbie's death, but one of the things that I noticed on this most recent rewatch is that Charlie says it would help to be gay, or if you're gay, you're probably more likely to survive. And you actually see Robbie make a shift away from him when he says this. And I've always had a difficult relationship with Robbie and queerness in this film. I've always read it as Robbie is queer, and that's why he says his line before he is killed by Ghostface.
Right.
So I read this as him saying, "Ooh, I don't want to be outed, so I'm just going to move away at a mention of queerness." But obviously you could read it the complete opposite way, which is that he doesn't want to be perceived as queer, so he moves away from a male friend when gayness is mentioned.
Right. And we didn't get to touch on this yesterday, but after Ari left our recording, he came back and was like, wait, I have one more thing to tell you. And it was in the original draft. I'm sorry, in one of these drafts, the one we discussed yesterday. Robbie isn't gay, but he has a line in this scene that says, oh, you can kill gay characters now. It's social progress. So that morphed into you'll survive if you're gay.
Right. Huh. It sounds like it's saying the same thing, but there's actually a difference in the two things, right? Like, one is saying, oh, well, gay characters are not special enough.
Right.
You could just kill them. It doesn't matter anymore. Whereas this is saying, I mean, I know a lot of people have interpreted these mentions, so specifically this and then Robbie's line at the end, as Williamson making almost like a casting condemnation on the lack of representation and queer characters in horror. Like, they're so rare that you couldn't kill them because we so infrequently see them.
Which, the irony, right? 2011 to 2022, and look at all the queer horror we have now.
Well, and for the first time, we're going to have an actual out gay character in the new film. So Jasmine Savoy Brown's character is canonically queer. She wears a pride pin in her movie poster for the new film.
Yep. I'm excited to see what happens. Fuck. I'm excited for this movie. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and it's one of those things. And again, we don't know how much of this was rewritten by Kruger and whatever Boardman guy. But if it is Williamson, it does kind of come across as like, oh, like, why are you, a queer man, giving us these crumbs? You know, a little bit.
I mean, I would take it as it's 2011 and we're still not quite there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still getting challenged on, oh, you think it's a queer reading of this contemporary film. Like, I mean, folks, you've heard Trace and I talk about it before, but literally every time we post a new episode on Bloody Disgusting, we get comments saying, this movie's not queer. There's nothing gay about Batman Returns. And you're just like, oh my God, people, we cannot keep having these conversations. So I think in 2011, we were definitely not there.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
I mean, I'm happy we're even just saying the word gay in 2011 in a screen film, because we sure as fuck were not getting that. We were getting homo repressed mama's boy before.
Yeah, that's true. Valid point. On to bigger and brighter screams with explicitly queer characters.
Yes. Okay, so the other big takeaway from this particular scene is that we anticipate that the bloodbath will occur at Stabathon.
Yes.
Which is the first time we've heard about it in this film. And I remember fixating on this idea because I love going to midnight movies in real life. I love movie marathons, particularly in a cinema or in a communal experience. So the idea of getting to go and see multiple stab films back to back to back, the dream.
Trust me. I mean, I've done it in my apartment enough, but I want it in a theater.
Yes, I'm talking about something a little more grand than watching them back to back in our own apartments, because I too have also done that, sir. Okay, so back at home, we have Jill complaining about being under house arrest. She keeps referencing, oh, I'm being locked in a cell. And again, we have Sydney relating to her situation. Like, yeah, I've very much been there.
But once you know Jill's the killer, I love this little trade-off between them because, you know, we have Jill going, how do you handle it? People stare at you all the time? I feel like I couldn't handle it. I could never take that kind of attention.
Yeah.
Womp womp.
She is gaslighting Sydney to the extreme.
But she's also trying to get a take because she's like, oh, what does it feel like? Because I cannot wait to be in your shoes in less than 24 hours.
I cannot wait to butcher everyone I have ever known so that I can feel the glimpse of the spotlight. Yeah, she just wants to bask in it.
There is something here that I never noticed, though, until this watch. So after Jill leaves, Sydney looks in the window door and sees a reflection of someone in the hallway behind her. But it doesn't come to anything. Like, she looks, she's like, all right, whatever.
I mean, you could read it as Sydney making the connection that she is in the house with someone dangerous. Like, oh, I thought I saw the killer. No, you saw Jill. Jill is the danger, Sydney.
Maybe Jill was stuck around just to watch her before she went upstairs.
Yeah, it feels like it could have been another scene that they maybe considered filming. Or just the idea that Sydney is a little bit paranoid because she's got her guard up now.
Right. That makes sense.
Anyway. So Kirby, meanwhile, is updating Jill about Trevor and also Stabathon because she has actually gone to this. So,
but I think Olivia would understand. I think she would want me to be around other people.
Oh my God, Kirby. I mean, we talked about some of the criticisms of the film from critics, and one of the things that I saw was, oh, how come the teens don't feel more empathy, or how come they're not shell-shocked? I think we talked about that. And I could see people referencing Kirby's reaction, like, don't you feel like you're in danger? You're connected to Jill. Why are you at this public event? Your friend was also just murdered last night. But I've always read it as Kirby fancies herself a bit of an amateur detective as well. Like, she's keeping an eye on the scene because she wants to be in the know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But, yeah.
That was a journey, Trace.
No, because I was like, well, I was going to say, well, because she doesn't really know Olivia that well. I was like, no, we don't know Olivia that well.
Yeah, presumably she knew Olivia reasonably well.
Well, and we know why Jill didn't give a shit.
Yes. Jill's like, I just need to get out of here so I can murder some people.
But wait, because we're about to get the most gifable moment with Gale sneaking into this damn Stabathon.
Indeed, yeah. So Gale has figured out where Stabathon is occurring, even though it is a secret location. So she lands on planet Dork, and she is dressed as Ghostface. Apparently, as always on movie sets, they were not playing music. So Wes Craven told Courteney Cox to just dance like she was listening to something funky.
The double thumbs up as she's just like fucking swaying. It is so stupid, and it's so awesome.
It's fantastic. It's like the ultimate, you're an old person trying to go undercover as a teenager.
Well, and I will say too, because the trailer has that moment when she pulls the mask off, and I remember everyone was like, oh my god, is Gale the killer? And I was like, okay, if Gale's the killer, they're not gonna fucking put that shot in the trailer, like, get a life. But it was really good.
It is, yeah. So she is there to set up cameras so that she can surveil the party and keep an eye on what's happening. So she puts them up in all these different places, and then she gets back to her car and just sees they're immediately being covered up by Ghostface.
I think this sequence is really, really good. I think it is outside of the Olivia, like, what you're saying, how effective and just tense it is. I think this is really tense, but if only because we are so worried for Gale in these moments.
Hard agree. I was convinced that they were going to kill one of the three originals when I saw this, and I was convinced it was going to be Gale, particularly because of this moment. It seems the most obvious way that if you're going to get rid of one of the three, this is it.
There's also, we have the killer, covering the things, but we get this again, for the first of two times in this movie, this backwards camera reveal of the killer. But what I also love is that it's kind of calling back to Scream 2, because she's getting attacked while Heather Graham is getting attacked in the movie. Yes. And I can never tell which screams are Courteney Cox's and which screams are Heather Graham's.
Oh, interesting. I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, I love the symmetry. It's a great callback, but it's also just a fantastic set piece. My criticism is always just that it's too brief. I wanted more of a chase scene, more of a fight scene between Gale and, we know it's Charlie at this moment, but
right.
She gets stabbed in the shoulder. She falls off the second-story loft onto a bale of hay. It looks very painful. Dewey is there. He starts shooting. It's just a little too abrupt for me. I want more.
Actually, this could be Jill.
No, Jill is still at the house because she's got to kill her mom.
Fuck, right. I was like, because she would stab her, because there was never an intention to kill Gale, because Jill wanted to write that book with her.
To be honest, I wouldn't have been surprised if Jill had been, you know what, I'll write the book myself. Fuck you, you're dead.
It's fine. Now, okay, of course, the big thing that's in the trailer that is not in this movie is Gale's "go ahead if you have the guts" line.
You miss it, don't you?
I don't like it in the trailer. I remember seeing it, and I was like, why the fuck would she say that? There is a fan edit, of course, that incorporates it back in.
Naturally.
I will say that in practice, I do like it. I think it works.
Okay.
But, again, mileage may vary.
I like it because it seems like the kind of thing that Gale would say, I don't think Gale ever wants to die. I think she always also fancies herself a survivor, but she is not going to take shit even when threatened with death.
Yeah.
We saw that with number 2, right?
No, it's like if she thinks she's like literally about to die, then she's going to go out fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say one of my least favorites, so there's a couple of kind of clunker sort of lines or moments in this movie for me.
Yeah.
One of them is when in between Gale realizing that her cameras are being covered up and deciding to go back in and she gets attacked, she calls Dewey. And says like, hey, this is all going down at Stabathon, you need to get here. And she says meta, and he goes, what is that? And she goes, I don't know, all the kids are saying it. And I'm just like, nope, Gale would absolutely know what meta is. I don't for a second believe that she wouldn't understand that term.
Okay, that makes, I actually do like the exchange because I think it's funny, but your rationale does make sense. Dewey, he does.
I get the Dewey not getting it, but Gale would 100% be on top of that lingo.
I will confess, in 2011 when I saw this movie, I did not know what meta was.
Really? Okay.
I have no idea. Metatextual. There you go.
Yes.
But for some reason, 20-year-old Trace did not know what that meant.
Well, we have established that 20-year-old Trace was a bit of a dum-dum.
I was not very smart.
I kid.
No, it's fine. Wait, 22. I'm sorry, 22-year-old Trace. Oh my god. Pretend like I said 20.
What is time? So, okay, Gail has been stabbed in the shoulder. Dewey has more or less rescued her. Stabathon is now over. We all thought this was going to be where the end of the movie takes place, because that's what Scream does, right? We get to the party, and then we spend the entire climax there. And for the first time ever, no, that's not what we're doing.
And the timestamp works out because this party starts, or Gail gets stabbed at the 1 hour mark. And that is exactly when the party starts in the first film.
Yes. Yeah. So I love, again, we're still doing subversive things. You thought you knew where this was going. No, you didn't.
And that's why those reviews that are like, we're just doing a retread of the first movie. I'm like, okay, no, we're not.
Yeah. Again, it's tell me you don't know Scream without telling me you don't know Scream.
Yep.
Okay, so we have to cut back to the house for a little bit. We've got Haas and Perkins talking about movie cop cliches. And then Haas spots an open window while he's on patrol. This is also where Sydney removes a fucking set of wind chimes. All of this is just a little bit nonsense. We're trying to build up some suspense and tension, and it's fine. I just don't care about any of it. Like, it's hard to go from Gail being threatened to this pair of Barney Fife-ish cops.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, look, we will skip over it. Like, they get killed. We get a fuck Bruce Willis line. A lot of the fan edits remove that line. It's very smart.
Thank God.
Like, whatever. They're out of the movie.
Yeah, it's just not my favorite sequence of the film. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So Sydney is then startled by Kate, who has come home with groceries, and this is where we learn that Gail has been attacked on the news, and then Ghostface calls.
No, because Ghostface calls her and says, turn on the news.
Oh my God, turn on the news.
And that's the mom in Scream 3. Be a good dear and do what your mother tells you. Turn on the news.
Honestly, Sydney's like, if somebody tells me to turn on the fucking news one more time, I will blow a shit fit.
Oh my, I hope that happens in Scream 2022.
She's just like, no, I will not turn on the news.
I don't want to know.
Also, I don't have cable. I don't even know how to get the news anymore.
Oh my God. Is that on Hulu TV?
What channel is that? Siri, how do I get the news? Oh, she just goes on Twitter and she's like, can anyone tell me how to get this? Is it streaming? Where can I get it? Just go to Just Watch, Sydney.
This is also the last big phone call we get between Sydney and Ghostface, and I do like this as well because it's when they lean in on the whole like, we're going after your family and blah 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 blah,
which I think makes sense because this is I read this as Jill making the call.
Yes, I do as well, 100%.
So, because she has gotten a threatening phone call about family, Sydney runs upstairs, finds that Jill has left. This is when Ghostface then attacks.
Well, she is left because she is killing Haas and Perkins.
Yes. Yeah, she is also killing her mom through the mail slot, which I was very unsatisfied about in 2011, the first time I saw this. I thought it was such a mediocre death. I think it was more about the fact that I didn't know who Kate was, and it felt like this moment gets a lot of emotional components. Like, Sydney is upset by this, although we do have to move on rather quickly. It seems like this is a bigger death than, say, Haas or Perkins.
Yeah.
And I just didn't really understand why, although I did love the idea of someone getting stabbed through a mail slot.
Yeah, no, the method of murder I think is really cool. And I knew it was coming as soon as she shrunk down. I was like, girl.
Yeah.
But I do think also her tell Jill, I'm sorry, kind of ruins it. And I'm also like, sorry for what?
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, well, but it's because the emotional... I don't know her relationship with Jill.
Well, we barely get a scene between mother and daughter in this final edit, right? There's the moment where she's making dinner, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's when I told Jill I'm sorry. I was like, okay, sorry for what? Like, for being a pill popper? For being a drunk? For, like, what? Like, Sydney didn't ask for clarification.
Yeah.
For dying? I'm sorry for dying.
I don't know about you, but if I felt like I was maybe even potentially in danger of being killed, I'm not going to go get groceries in the middle of the night.
Well, I mean, she's drunk, so.
Wow. Okay. Yes.
She is!
I mean, I don't read her as drunk all the time, Trace.
This performance is just so bizarre.
It is, yes. It's different. Okay. So we got Deputy Hicks arriving on the scene, realizing that there's been another murder. This is the moment where we can kind of knock Judy Hicks out of the suspect list because she calls I mean, she calls Dewey and immediately seems like, oh shit, there's been more murders. And
I do like the line, though, when she's like, because Dewey's like, what happened? She goes, stabbed, just like the others. I was like, okay. I don't know why. It just sounds so funny to me.
It reminded me of conversations that I've had with Patrick from Kill by Kill, where he was always trepidatious of him and Gina going through the Scream films because they always do, you know, as we talked about last week on Witchboard, they do a choose your own death venture. And he was like, well, what am I going to do? Stabbed in the back, stabbed in the gut, stabbed in the forehead. It's all just stab.
I would probably take that forehead death, to be honest. That seems like the least painful.
Oh my God. I also hate that death. I just think it's dumb.
Oh, I like the death. I just don't care.
Right. Okay. That's fair. So we jump to the hospital. It's a very brief scene, but we do get to see Dewey reconnecting with Gale. He pledges to stay with her forever, and she makes him promise that he will catch the killer.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice. It's a good scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's the last time we'll see Gale, too, until the very end.
True.
Actually,
also
kind
true.
of Dewey, too.
Yeah, more or less, because it's not about them. It's about Sydney and family.
Right.
So let's jump to the after party, which is the true third act bloodbath. We are at Kirby's house, and we have Charlie, Robbie, and Jill all there. They're still talking about new rules. They're watching Stab 7. Again, I recognize that it's expensive to shoot fake movies. It's just an added thing that you would have to do. I would have loved if we could have had a different Stab film.
Yeah. I want to see Stab 2.
Oh, you want to see what they would do with the Jada Pinkett opening?
Yeah,
for Stab
sure.
2?
Fuck, show me Stab 3. Let me see how they butcher Cotton's death.
Well, even like, okay, I'm putting this to you, but if you don't know, I'm also curious to know if the listeners know. Do they ever talk about Stab 4 and what happens in that? Because that's the one that they don't have a rule book to go after, but they don't mention it in this film.
Right. I don't think they do, because we have the first 3. 5 is time travel. 6 and 7 we see. Stab 4 is the only one we have no idea what's going on in that movie, which maybe the idea was that this is Stab 4, so like we're making it, we're learning it, we're seeing it.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Although now I want to be like, oh, who plays Debbie Salt in the Scream universe?
Oh my God. I would cast Debbie Mazar.
Oh, that is funny. No, but I love Debbie Mazar, but she looks evil, and maybe that's just because I have seen Beethoven 2 too many times. But
God.
No, you need someone who's kind of quirky and funny and goofy, like Laurie Metcalf is.
Right. Okay, so Lake Bell.
Oh my God. Listeners, send us your casting in for who plays Mrs. Loomis, Debbie Salt in Stab 2.
Oh my God. And also make Stab 2.
Yes, make Stab 2. Honestly, if they ever remake the Scream franchise, I just hope they call it Stab.
How funny would that be? They would not do that, but that would be amazing.
It'd be really funny.
Or just like throw piles of, like, just back up a dump truck of money to Robert Rodriguez's house and say, just make it in your garage like you do with all of your other movies.
Yes. Here's $7,000. There you go.
Basically, yeah. And we need 2 movies on that. Okay, so so we're watching Stab 7. Charlie and Kirby are flirting. Trevor shows up because Jill texted him, which she denies.
Who invited you, Trevor?
Oh my God. I think that line delivery is maybe one of the reasons. One of the many, many reasons why I love Hayden Panettiere in this film. We've barely talked about her in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Kirby is so fucking iconic, and it's not just because she's a girl geek who knows horror movies. Like, there is something about her performance where she is leaping off the screen. I watched all of Heroes.
Yeah, me too.
She is okay in that. Like, I think she's doing what she can with a not great character. Mm-hmm. I like her in her Bring It On movie with Solange.
I do too! Bring It On, All or Nothing.
It's great. Folks, if you have not watched Bring It On, All or Nothing, there is a moment where she has to learn how to, like, kind of crump, and it's hilarious.
She also farts in the opening scene.
Indeed, yep, because it is a Bring It On movie.
No, that movie is, like, surprisingly solid for a direct-to-video.
Yeah. But, like, I've always enjoyed Hayden Panettiere, and I think that this is kind of her apex performance. She has never been so sexy, so likable. She is rocking a haircut that I couldn't have imagined anyone successfully pulling off.
No, people complained about it, like, in the publicity photos. They were like, what the fuck is up with Hayden? But it's because they knew her from Heroes, right? Like, she's the cheerleader. Save the cheerleader, save the world.
Yeah.
And she has like wormed her way into the hearts of so many horror. I mean, again, how many people have you seen be like, where the fuck is Kirby in Scream 5, you know?
Oh my God, us. We have said that.
What I learned from that commentary, which I didn't know before, so it was in her contract that she could not die on screen. Like, they could not show her dying, which is why, the last time we see her, her hand is moving or whatever. Like,
yeah, her and Jill, we don't actually have confirmed deaths for either of them.
I would say Jill's pretty confirmed, but she was shot in the stomach or the chest, not the head. But
I'm just saying there's a very slight but noticeable kind of eye facial twitch on Jill when you see her in her last shot.
Got it. But yeah,
but I mean, no, I actually do think Jill is dead, but they could easily bring her back because Scream has done it a million times.
Yeah, that's fine. But no, I agree. Panettiere, it does a lot. And again, like, she doesn't even have like that much screen time, but she makes that impression. And she's kind of, I mean, I hate even saying, oh, she's the replacement Randy, but like, that kind of is the trajectory that this character has gone on in the past 10 years. Yeah,
and I think as we have soured towards the character of Randy for being kind of incel prototype and just not great in terms of his stalker characteristics and other elements that we have come to move away from, Kirby becomes this alternative who is not just more suitable, but is actually more exciting.
Yes, I would agree. And it's not just the fact that she's a woman. It's just like, she's just striking, and that's it.
Yeah, and she's not gross. Like, it's kind of refreshing.
She's not stalking Jill to college.
I mean, unless we had gotten the second in this planned franchise.
But see, in that case, it would have been Jill following Kirby to college.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. Okay, so Hicks is catching Dewey up as we see the teens kind of drifting apart. Jill goes upstairs. Robbie is drunkenly live streaming. Again, my reading of him as a queer character, he's giving the kind of play-by-play of Charlie and Kirby potentially hooking up. And at one point he says, "My Charlie Walker." And I get that he's meant to be drunk and that it's his friend, but it also feels very, I'm in love with my best friend.
Yeah, I can definitely. I mean, that's coding, right? Like, you're reading into this, which is fine. I've never thought about it that much. But I think it's only because the people that are like, oh, he's only saying he's gay to get out of being killed, he's not really gay, has like wormed its way into my brain to where I'm like, okay, that's canon for me.
Yeah, I've always been the opposite, where he's actually saying, no, but I am gay. This is the rules. You can't kill me because of this.
Yeah, and honestly, yes, that's totally fine.
Well, it's just so funny because I always thought that my reading, I mean, oh, shocker, white man thinks his reading is the right one, but it never occurred to me that people thought otherwise until one day I said it to people and they said, oh, no, he's just saying it to get out of being killed. It never occurred to me to read it that way.
I don't think the consensus is that he's not gay. I think it's, I mean, I feel like I've seen a fairly even split on what people think, but I don't know. Listeners, let us know what you think about Robbie and like, is he gay? Is he or isn't he?
Yeah. Let's out this fictional character once and for all.
Is he,
Is he a little, Yeah. So, meanwhile, Kirby is encouraging Charlie to make a move, and this is when Trevor cockblocks her. All of this is amusing and funny. Again, I like that Nico gets to have a bit of a moment here as Trevor when they're not acting as a creepy, nefarious dude. Robbie gets stabbed. This is obviously a Charlie kill.
Yes.
Because Jill is technically upstairs because she comes down to say that Trevor isn't there.
So I didn't mention these because I don't really think they're that important, but there are a few deleted bits here where it's like, after they go look for the phone, Jill and Trevor out by her car, and he apologizes and he's like, I'm not the bad guy, but I'll help you look for your phone. I know someone texted me from your phone. There's another bit where Robbie's walking around, and we actually, like, the camera like goes by a pillar and we actually see Ghostface, like it's like really close up because Robbie's on the other side. But then he turns around and runs into Trevor, and then that's where we go to his death scene. But it's like it's just more Trevor stuff, and you're just like meh.
Yeah. And I think at this point in the film, we're trying to ramp things up. We don't need more red herrings and false starts. Like, we need to get to the murders. Yeah.
For me, removing that fixes the pacing. It's good for the pacing. Like, cutting that out is a good decision they made.
Yeah, we're not losing anything. It's for the best.
Yes. And again, you're right. We're amping up here. Like, we are in the home stretch.
Yeah. So basically, Sydney arrives and we learn, okay, shit, things are actually going down. So the three women end up hiding in Kirby's room because Ghostface has burst in. This is when Sydney calls Dewey. She's out on the roof. We get her tumbling off, which is another homage to the first Scream.
Oh, you're right. I've never even thought about that, but yes.
To be honest, I only really caught it on this rewatch because I just talked about it in our 25 Reasons to Love Scream episode.
I will say there are a lot of nods in this movie that I really haven't caught until this week, which is really silly considering I've seen this movie at least 20 times.
So many times, yeah.
But I think honestly, like, again, we were talking about yesterday, like, it's fan service done right, where it's like, it's there if you see it. If you don't, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it pays off for the people who want to pay attention and keep track of the Easter eggs. And if not, it's just fine. It's like Sydney falling off the roof, escaping from Ghostface.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sydney and Kirby end up hiding in the basement. This is where we get this iconic scene, which I feel like if there's one moment that people associate with this film, it's very much like Jill's reveal, for lack of a better term, but also this moment where Kirby just lists off every remake in the aughts, and it's just everything.
Name the remake of the groundbreaking horror movie in which the villain...
Halloween, Texas Chainsaw, Dawn of the Dead, The Hills Have Eyes, Amityville Horror, Last House on the Left, Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, My Bloody Valentine, When a Stranger Calls, Prom Night, Black Christmas, House of Wax, The Fog, Piranha. It's one of those, right? Right?
It is awesome. It doesn't make a lot of sense as to why she wouldn't wait for the question, but it is a really powerhouse moment because this is a better film trivia moment than anything Randy has done for us, right?
Oh, God, yeah. Like,
this is like, oh, shit, like, you know your shit. I mean, the mention of Piranha, which came out the year before, I was like, shit, that it's not a deep cut, but it's like, you wouldn't expect that to be in the list of, like, big horror remakes, you know?
Yeah, and it acknowledges that Piranha is a slasher as well.
Yes. Oh my God. Oh yeah. This is, and the music that's playing to it is so intense.
It's so intense.
I do love that moment when Charlie's outside begging to be let in, and like Sydney's like, "Don't let him in if you don't trust him." And you see her make that decision to not let him in the house.
Well, and it's really interesting. So we highlighted the lighting in the Deputy Judy scene with Sydney earlier. This is kind of Sydney's moment where she's in the shadow, almost speaking as this voice of wisdom in Kirby's ear, right? But there's something kind of dark. Like, this is Sydney the survivor saying, don't let a boy in if you don't trust him.
And
a message for women, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, she then makes the decision to like run out there and like save him before getting a confirmation from Ghostface that like she won.
Yeah, she's a little speedy on the gun, admittedly.
So I don't. This actually her quote unquote death. Obviously, it's brutal. It's really upsetting. But like, it's Charlie's words to her. Like, he goes, "Kirby, this is making a move." And he stabs her, and he goes, 4 years of classes together, and you notice me now, stupid bitch. It's too late. And it's like, ooh, man, ooh, that's your Randy.
Yeah, really. I mean, this is Randy gone wrong, feeling entitled to the attention of a pretty girl. Like, yeah, it's dark and grim. I think it's probably one of the better moments for Charlie in this film. I don't love Rory Culkin, not just because the hair is bad, but
I hate the hair.
I just don't think Charlie's a particularly memorable character. You said yesterday in part one that he's arguably one of the worst killers in the franchise. And I think it's just because we don't get enough of him like a lot of the other characters. But this moment between the two of them, really, it's been building this entire film, and it is heavy with implication. And like, those knife thrusts look really painful.
Also, I understand the irony of us talking about don't comment on the women's looks, and then we're like, Rory Culkin's hair, ew. So, observed, noted, checked.
You know what? I feel like we have a lot of catching up to do with the objectification of men, so I feel very confident talking Especially as a queer man. You know what? If I see hair that doesn't do it for me, I'm going to call it out.
That's fair. All right.
No, I realize we're hypocrites. Let's move on.
No, it's fine. No, okay, so 85-minute mark. I haven't done timestamps all episode, but yeah, Charlie reveal 85 minutes into this movie. And
okay.
Again, people talk about, like, the hospital's too tacked on. If we didn't have the hospital, this movie would be 95 minutes long.
Yeah, and we keep talking about how we want it to be longer.
Yeah. Well, I guess the trade-off is you add in those 20 minutes of deleted scenes and get rid of the 20-minute hospital scene.
It's true. Yeah. I think at one point in the audio commentary, Wes Craven makes a joke like, this movie would have been 2.5 hours. And
you know what? I would have fucking watched it.
I mean, this is why we have fan edits, because I'm convinced that we all just want this movie to be 2 hours and 20, 2 hours and 30.
Give it to me.
Give it to me.
Give it to me.
If I hear that this new Scream is like 90 minutes long, I'm going to be shattered.
I think it's confirmed hour 56.
Yes. Give it to me.
Yeah, it's around there. It's definitely between hour 50 and 2 hours.
Fantastic. Okay, so we go back to Sydney. Sydney's kind of out there. We don't know where Jill is. And then Sydney gets attacked by Charlie. She then runs down the hall towards the front door and is stabbed by Ghostface. Ghostface reveals the mask. It is Jill.
Okay, so I fucking love this. I know we've said this for the past 2 episodes, but I
for the past 2
this.
episodes, for the past 4 years, folks, strap in. Trace has been waiting for this moment.
This is not only a brilliant bit of writing to make the character of Jill the killer, which is, like, again, you make the cousin of your final girl the killer, but also to put Emma Roberts in this role. And I think it's really interesting because, as you and I both know, like, after this, she has been typecast as a bitch, from American Horror Story to Scream Queens to even fucking Holiday. She's a bitch. And it's so interesting because when this movie came out, I don't think anyone called her as the killer. And listeners, if you did, good for you. Now,
I'm sure a couple of people did. But yeah, like, going into it, the critical consensus was not like, oh, it's definitely going to be Jill.
Right, and I have shown this to people, in the years since, many people, and I will tell you right now that as the years go on, the people that peg Jill as the killer early in the movie is astounding, because it was like, oh, Emma Roberts always plays a bitch, she's the killer, and I was like, but not when this movie came out.
No, it's a hilarious hindsight kind of deal, right? Because this movie changed the course of her career to the point where we now associate her with this. But at the time, yeah, you're absolutely right. She was the good girl.
She was, Nickelodeon, Hotel for Dogs, Nancy Drew. And I remember seeing, again, delivering this monologue we're about to get from her when she is just dropping F-bombs. And I know people don't like her. I know that she has that domestic abuse thing going on. But that being said, as a professional, as a performer,
right,
I really do like her in this movie. I like her in these bitchy roles because obviously she's good at it.
Yeah.
I feel people really give her a lot of shit, and I feel bad for her for that. Domestic abuse aside. But
right.
But she runs away with this movie in these final scenes.
Oh, absolutely. It feels not just like, okay, yeah, we're building up to the reveal of who Ghostface is. Obviously, it's a big moment in any Scream film. This captures the level of unexpected what the fuckery that we obviously did not get with Roman in Scream 3.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like the best thing after Mrs. Loomis.
Well, and this is the film saying something. The film is making a statement on not only a generation, but just, technology in general. Like, again, like that review I quoted yesterday where it's like, oh, this would feel more apt coming out of a Kardashian's mouth, not like the killer in the Scream movie. And it's like, yeah, but that's where we were as a culture back then. Keeping up with the Kardashians. Like, that's what this is spoofing.
Yeah, I can't remember if it happened on air. I think it was after we stopped recording. I went back and I checked to see when The Simple Life was on. It was in 2002 that show debuted. So, like, we as a culture obsessed with celebrity, but also to a certain extent nepotism, where we were starting to see the children of famous people become famous in their own right for literally the thing that Jill talks about. I don't want to do anything. I just want to be famous. It was at least 9 to 10 years old at this point. So for people to say, oh, well, this is unexpected, I would have expected this at a Kardashian. You're like, that's what the film is commenting on.
Yes, that's the point.
It is baffling. Yeah.
And so, yeah, her physicality too, because I always laugh because when they bring out Trevor, and she does that line where she's like, here's one that fucks you, dumps you, and doesn't even make you famous. And then she just keeps kicking him.
Yeah, and then she does the cheating line. She shoots him in the dick. And then there is no ceremony to this either. It's basically kick, shoot, and then second shot in the head.
Yep.
It's rough, too, because we also have to hear... I mean, we don't like Trevor as a character. We don't know that much about him. He seemed like he's been shitty or shady the whole movie. But watching him plead for his life, and she just shoots him in the forehead.
Oh, yeah. Like, he has no idea what's going on, which is also... It's almost sad. And I want to say, so to show you how stupid people can be sometimes. So, you know, she has this line right before she kills him, and she's like... You shouldn't have killed all those people, Trev. Go on and put it on video even. But it means a lot that you did it for me. I swear to God. It was either in a comment section or maybe back when IMDb boards were still a thing. But someone was like, wait, so was
Trevor
he really involved? Did she betray? Was he the partner and she betrayed him? And I was like, no!
Oh my God.
Idiot.
No.
But yes, ready for Act 3, which is just the last 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So we start to go into it. Jill reveals that she resents Sydney's specialness. She and Charlie fancy themselves as the new Sydney and Randy. And it seems like they're very much on board. We get the really icky kiss between the two of them. We're just like, no, please.
It makes no sense. Which, even in the moment, you're like, gross. But then it makes sense because she doesn't give a shit.
Well, she's gaslighting him the way that she has with everyone else in this movie.
She has that line delivery of the, I was so believable today, wasn't I? And I was like,
I started to believe all the lies I was telling. And she's so impressed with herself. What a fucking narcissist.
Well, that's that review yesterday where it was like the movie is smug. No. Jill is smug.
Yeah. We should also note at this point that Charlie basically doesn't last much longer. She ends up... He thinks that they're going to recreate the iconic Billy and Stu kitchen scene, and she just goes right for the chest.
Oh, yeah. She stabs that fucker.
I mean, he's almost as dumb. Oh, not how we rehearsed it.
The heart.
No shit, dude. She has killed you.
I do love that Sydney fills him in on it, though. She's like, you said it, Charlie. Billy and Stu, Trevor and you.
Yeah, you are a dumb shit. She has played you this whole time. And then, of course, we start to get some of these iconic lines. So she doesn't want friends. She wants fans. She's
sick as
the new sane. And she's going to become famous despite not achieving anything.
This is her delivery. What am I supposed to do? Go to college, grad school, work? But like her
the
eyes,
worst possible outcome. Work?
She rolls her eyes on the delivery of work, and it is, I mean, again, this character is the embodiment of the worst traits of millennial / Gen Z, whatever you want to pick.
Sure.
And it boggles my mind that the critics that were bitching about this movie didn't see that it was mocking a generation that they mock.
Well, it's weird because they very clearly acknowledge it. The number of critics who address this, which also, this is the killer monologue, and you're actively spelling it out in your reviews, but they address it as though it's a facile, kind of very surface, very shallow criticism. And part of me is like, yeah, but nobody else is saying this in movies. And also, did you expect a Scream film to be talking about this? I mean, I feel like fans do, because I listen to this and I think, oh, this is the update on Mickey.
Well, yes, you are correct. It is interesting, though, because again, it's like critics tripped over themselves to praise Scream and Scream 2. Mm-hmm. It's so interesting how, 11 years after Scream 3, again, like the one quote-unquote failure in the franchise, and I'm using failure, obviously, lightly, how quick they were to be like, well, this didn't do it. And I do wonder if it's because, like, again, we're in a transitional period for horror. Like, right. Scream revitalized and resuscitated a dead genre.
Right.
It didn't need to be resuscitated at this point in time. And so I wonder if that was critics were like, why do we have this Scream sequel when we literally have an endless barrage of horror films coming out constantly?
Which, yes, I could see it, but also that is so hypocritical because the amount of bemoaning at the end of the remake cycle, which is where we're at in 2011, everybody just kept saying, oh, well, horror is obviously creatively bankrupt because all we do is remake films from the 70s and 80s now.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, what do you want exactly?
And this movie, is trying to remake Scream, just a lot of those deleted scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, it is fascinating to me how the two kind of points that Ari talked about, the remake idea versus the kind of celebrity fixation, like they come together so well in everything that Jill is doing here, right?
Yes.
Yes, we're getting the remake, which is what Charlie thought he was signing on for, and then what Jill is giving us is the other counterpoint. And that's one of the reasons I love the dual villain role in Scream, is because the killers often have competing or contradictory motivations. So this is also in keeping with franchise canon. Like, I just love the fact that unlike Stu and Billy in the first one, where they have different motivations, but they're on the same wavelength, this is, we have different motivations and we're on different wavelengths. It's the killer is actively subverting the other killer. We have never seen that before, and it's so exciting.
Well, we kind of see it in Scream 2 with Mrs. Loomis and Billy.
Oh, fair. Okay.
To a lesser extent, I see what you're saying. But it's also a different relationship because she's like a mother to him, and she's obviously the age gap there. These are two teenagers, so I'll give it to you. Like I get what you're saying, because I thought the same thing yesterday, and then I corrected myself.
Right. I will say, though, thinking about this, like, far more than I usually do, because usually I'm just, like, throwing out a Scream film because I fucking love it and I want to be entertained. This film feels... I think one of the other reasons maybe you and I respond to it so strongly is because it also feels like a perfect synthesis of 1 and 2. Like, it's a very obviously remaking and paying homage to the first film, but it's also doing a lot of the things that number 2 did so well, right? Like, Jill is Miss Loomis. We've got this subversion of killer motivations in an interesting way, like 2. We've got interesting set pieces-ish.
If this film is lacking in one thing, there isn't a set piece that matches those 2 and 2, which is fun. Or even Cece's, Sarah Michelle Gellar's kill in 2, which is fine. Like, I think Olivia's stuff is memorable. I think the barn scene is memorable. It just isn't as memorable as those other set pieces.
Yeah.
But again, what is memorable to me is all of this climax. Like, we've talked about issues with this film. We've talked about problems with this film. This climax earns so much goodwill for me, especially with this self-mutilation scene we're about to get to, which is like peak cinema for me.
Oh my God. Okay, so let's get to it. So Jill is now the last woman standing, but she's got to make it look convincing. So she stabs Sydney, just for good measure. So now Sydney's taken 2. Jill begins. She grabs Trevor's hand and she scratches her own face, and then she uses his hand to pull out her hair. So that's step 1.
Step 1.
She then props the knife against the corner and then stabs herself in the shoulder. She then breaks every glass surface available in the house. So she takes a running leap at this painting on the wall. Go ahead.
This is the one. Like, her stabbing herself looks very painful. That's really good. But the visual, it's funny and upsetting shocking at the same time, because she runs and she doesn't bounce off the wall.
She just goes head first into it.
Head first and just falls on the ground.
Yeah.
If you have not seen this movie, just Google this scene, because this visual is so good. It's so great.
It's high camp in a way. Not in a traditional sense. Like, it's not campy in that way, but the intersection between deeply upsetting self-mutilation violence, but also her reactions to it. Like, she is selling the pain that accompanies each of these actions, but she's also unwilling to stop because she knows she has to make it convincing. And it's just fascinating to watch. And Emma Roberts screaming when she stabs herself in the shoulder, and then like when she runs into the wall and she just kind of picks herself up and she just sort of trudges over to the coffee table and then has to take this giant fucking leap in the air, which we get to see in beautiful slow motion. That's
great. Well, I also love it too, because this is, maybe I'm wrong here. definitive statement, but it's really the only time in the franchise where we've seen a killer unmasked, literally and metaphorically, with no one else around them. They are just being themselves. And this girl is a crazy fucking bitch and embraces it and runs with it.
Yeah. And then it all finishes with this frankly beautiful visual symmetry where she mirrors Sydney's pose so that she can be the final victim.
Yep. And I mean, again, and what may have been the original ending is her being wheeled out on these stretchers with all these fucking cameras going off on her face. It is really good.
And then it keeps going.
It does. Here's the thing. I really like this hospital set piece. It is sillier. It does dilute the impact of what just came before ever so slightly.
A little bit. Yeah, because we've hit this high point and then we have to kind of reset and build it back up again.
But the movie acknowledges it, and I get it, just because the movie acknowledges it doesn't make it not true, but that, again, earns a lot of goodwill with me.
Well, I think also the way that people were just absolutely wringing their hands about the potential loss of any one of the three main cast members, to have ended the film this way, people would have absolutely defaulted to assuming that Sydney was properly dead. And I don't think the franchise can kill Sydney at this point, because you will lose the goodwill of fans to such an extent that people would never forget the film.
Yeah. And we'll see if that holds true in a couple weeks. But no. So again, more Robert's praise. We have her talking to Dewey, and as soon as he's like, she might make it, the eye acting on Emma Roberts.
What the fuck?
You can see her break character, like, just so slightly, just for a split second, to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I killed her. Don't stab her in the stomach next time, Jill.
Yeah, like, go for the slit throat, people. That's how you get rid of somebody.
And I get that people may have that critique, but I'm like, no, because they were trying to match wounds. That's what she was doing. No, shouldn't stab her. No, never mind. I have no excuse for that.
Okay. I mean, I think she just, like, when you stab someone twice in the gut, I think you probably think you've done a decent job.
That's true. That's fair.
Okay, so we do get a quick moment where Dewey is talking to Gail, thinking that it's all over, and Gail, of course, connects the dots because she's really fucking good at her job. So we realize, oh shit, it is Jill. Jill is already on her way over to Sydney.
In the emptiest hospital in the world.
Yeah, super empty. Just because I haven't talked about it, I'm going to give myself a shout out back in our Black Christmas episode when we got to the hospital sequence that ends that film. I said, hey, doesn't Scream 4 rip this off? Because Black Christmas comes out before this film and they're very similar sequences.
Yeah, that is actually not an inaccurate statement.
Yes, it is. Because Hayden Panettiere and I are always right. We talked about this.
That's true.
Anyway, okay. So we've got Jill versus Sydney Redux, and I will say, this hurts. Sydney takes so many punches to the stomach where she has been stabbed twice.
Well,
ouch! Just so much ouch.
Well, hey. She does her, like, you just won't die, will you? But she starts strangling her. But then Sid palm heals her in the nose. And then Jill tries to gouge her eye out.
Ooh.
Well, then she just starts beating the shit out of her. They are on the floor. She knees her in the gut. Goes, how are those stitches? I mean, this is messy, sloppy, and I fucking love it.
Yeah, because this is something that Jill didn't plan for, right? Like, she doesn't have a perfect escape route for this. She's just got to kill this bitch before she gets discovered, and I love how that gets reflected in the fight.
Well, and I've seen people be like, well, Jill's really dumb. How is she going to get away with this? And I'm thinking to myself, I think this bitch is in flight or fight mode. Like, she isn't thinking, I'm getting away with this at this point. She is just, like, not thinking straight.
Well, I think in her mind, all she has to do is kill Sydney, and then she will figure it out later. But if Sydney is dead, then her cover remains intact because she doesn't know that Dewey knows. She doesn't know that Gail knows. So she's just like, I just got to kill this bitch once and for all, and I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, the end of the movie was supposed to be at the house. I mean, this is just silly.
Okay. So that is my new favorite line from this movie. It never connected with me. because I'm one of the people who hasn't loved the hospital sequence. Like, I was that person. So I've been coming around to it. And that line in particular. And Emma Roberts, again, her delivery. This is just silly.
Silly.
So good.
I mean, I remember watching this. I was just like, who knew she had it in her for this performance? Yeah. Who knew?
No one. Except apparently the casting agent and Wes Craven and everyone else on this movie. So I also want to give a credit to David Arquette because he was the one who apparently came up with the idea to get absolutely beaten with a bedpan.
Oh, I love that. Again, it's silly. This is silly.
It's silly, but it's also really rough. Like, that is a metallic bedpan. Taking that thing to the head the number of times that he does, he honestly would probably be dead, but it's rough. But it also is like, oh, you're hitting someone repeatedly with the thing that people urinate in.
Oh, yeah. Another good comedic beat, and I'm jumping ahead just a tiny bit, but it's once we have Gail and Judy in this room, and she's like, hostage-ing Dewey, like, get up, or I'm going to blow Dewey's head off. And there's this moment when Judy and Gail look at each other like,
yeah. We both love this man. We can't afford to lose him. Yeah. And then Jill shoots Judy.
Yeah.
So I think it is a little ridiculous. Maybe, as you said, she is in flight or fight mode, but I think it's a little ridiculous that Jill doesn't hear Sydney powering up this defibrillator. Well, Gail distracts her, but it's fine.
I mean, I also have a question as to why when she is, defibrillated in the head, that her reflexes don't squeeze the trigger on that gun.
Yeah, that's also fair. But again, we'll allow it.
Again, yeah. So this is a kind of over the top second climax to the film.
Yeah.
I get why people don't like it. I think it's just so damn fun.
I think it works because it brings the three back into play. And yeah, it's like, hey, did you get enough Jill? Because she's back and she's still zany.
Yes. Hey, it's like, without this, we wouldn't get these lines from Emma Roberts.
Exactly. And isn't it a gift, folks? Come on, really.
It is a gift.
So one of the other gifts that we get is this fucking power move of Sydney's where she zaps Jill and then says, you forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original. Oh, it's great.
I don't dislike that line. Like, I do like it. I don't love it as much as everyone else does.
Okay, says the person who literally incorporated it into yesterday's opening, but sure.
Oh, because it works, context-wise.
and maybe it's just because Sydney often gets these kind of quips, but it doesn't feel as much in character as someone like Gail.
Right.
But I like that we get to end the movie with a Sydney powerhouse move.
100%. Yeah, I do agree with you. But we don't really end the film there because we end the film with our killer's face.
Indeed. Yeah, we have to confirm that Judy is still alive. She wore a bulletproof vest, but...
Save your chest.
As she always says. Yeah.
And then she just passes out.
The wacky comedy of Marley Shelton.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we get another mirror image as Sydney and Jill are reflected in each other, except this time, yes, we're meant to assume that Jill is properly dead. Sydney turns away, and then this is actually... I think that this is really daring and fucking ballsy, is we end this scene with the reporters talking about the hero, Jill Roberts, American survivor, and that's how the movie ends. Like, the message is already out there. Jill wins. She gets her moment.
So yeah, we see the reporters doing this, then it switches to voiceover as we just close in on Jill's dead, open-eyed face. And that's how the movie ends.
Like, this isn't a victory for Sydney. This is a victory for Jill.
Yeah, and I get it. They're going to come out and be like, hey, y'all, by the way, she's a murderer.
But that's the thing. There would be people who immediately would dispel that. They would think that it was a conspiracy. There would be people who wouldn't hear that, and they would mistake it, and they would talk about Jill, and her name would go in infamy. People would confuse this, and she would get her revenge in that way.
I mean, that's the thing, too, right? This is fake news before fake news was a popular term.
It sure fucking is. Again, people, we're talking about a movie from 2011, anticipating things from the entirety of the next decade.
Of all the 2010s.
Yeah.
It's so great. And one tiny thing, so there was an epilogue that was added onto this that they rightfully cut out.
Okay.
It's back in the hospital the next day or something, and reporters are talking about Jill, and we see Dewey and Gale go to Sid's room. Judy tells Gale there are lemon squares next to Sydney's bed.
Oh my God. I love the lemon squares, but I don't need it a third time.
No, and apparently Gale promised Judy that she would be kind to her in her book about it. But then they go in and, you know, Gale's talking about writing a book, and then she's like, wait, Sydney, are you going to write a book? And she goes, no. Maybe. And then they just like all laugh together and then blackout.
Right. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, it's really awkward. It's really bad. And like, maybe that's why I'm so kind to the hospital epilogue, because I'm like, y'all, we could have gotten
It could have been so much worse. Yeah, they all honestly look uncomfortable.
Yes, they do. Mm-hmm.
Like, no, none of us really buy this. This isn't the way to end this movie.
But that is, oh my God, 2.5 Scream 4, y'all. That is Scream 4. I'm really glad we split these up into 2 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we wanted to do this right, and we knew we weren't going to be able to keep it brief. So hopefully folks have enjoyed these monster episodes, but like, Scream 4 demanded it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we have been building up to this for 3 years, and I hope we did it justice. I mean, I realize this one's a lot of like, I love this, I love this, I love this, but you know what? I love this.
And I refuse to apologize for it, yeah.
So that has been Scream 4, everyone. Again, Scream 2022 comes out next week, actually, so be on the lookout for our Patreon episode after that, but I guess I have a housekeeping.
a little bit of housekeeping. You know, it's the first episode back for the new year. I'll cut you some slack.
I totally forgot. So before we announce what we're covering next week, if you want to get in touch with us, please reach us on Twitter and Instagram at HorrorQueers. Join our Facebook Horror Queers group to hang out with other listeners, and find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. You can also go check out our YouTube channel. And to celebrate the new year and this amazing 1-2 punch of Scream 4 episodes, you should go leave us a review on your podcatcher of choice, be it Apple Podcasts or now Spotify, because you can leave reviews on Spotify now. If you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. So go subscribe, because we will have episodes on, as we've already mentioned,
just a few times, yeah.
Scream, Last Night in Soho. We'll also have our minisodes on the 2021 Hereditaries, our horror version of the Oscars, as well as a little indie film called See For Me. And our audio commentary for the month will be on last year's Psycho Goreman.
Yeah, we're going to try something a little adventurous with our audio commentaries this year. We're going to do anniversary films.
Which, we're also kind of doing that a little bit for our next few months of coverage, Joe.
Indeed, yeah. So, folks, you know that every January we kind of have a bit of a theme or something that ties the films together. And instead of going with, we're going to cover 4 films in a franchise or something like that, that seems a little too obvious, we decided, in recognition of Scream 4 and how it was not appreciated in its time, it was underseen and underappreciated, we ended up coming up with this theme of, well, what are the other underappreciated or underseen films that we would celebrate? So for 2011, it was Scream 4. And next week, we're going to move into 2012. And we will continue to do so all the way until we catch up with the present. So every week is going to be 1 year forward. And we're not going to tell you what the films are immediately, because we want to hear what film you think we should cover. So you have a couple of days. Tell us what film you think we would cover in 2012 as an underseen or underappreciated film. And then keep an eye out on our social media. We will tell you on Friday what film you should watch so that you can be ready for next week's episode.
And that is how it's going to be moving forward. So every week we're going to say, hey, it's a movie from this year. Every Friday, check our socials. We will tell you what it is.
So 2012, get your thinking caps on.
And go to Google.
Indeed, yes.
But until next week, we can cross out once and for all, finally, oh my God, Scream 4.
Oh my God, fuck me wow. Yes, and cross out Horror Queers.
It was late in the afternoon when the Professor and I took our way towards the east, whence I knew Jonathan was coming.
Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants an exact record kept.
Dear Madam Mina, I have read your husband's so wonderful diary. Strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it.
God preserve my sanity, for to this I am reduced. Safety and the assurance of safety are things of the past.
I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula.
Listen to Regarding Dracula wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm.